Holy frickin' crap, everybody. It's me, Monster Mack, and we're here with another edition of the Mackcast. On the side of me, as always, wearing a beautiful light blue mask. I love it, trainee. Trainee number one.
I call it more electric blue than light blue, but that's just me. And, Mac, we are here. We returned. I feel like we're home again. The Levesque's Log Cabin Studios with Scott Levesque here. And I got to say, it hasn't changed much since we've been gone.
He was nice enough to invite us back. We're totally portable, the Mackcast. We can go anywhere, anytime, at any place. And right now, we're in Scott Levesque's lovely log cabin. I'm very excited. I always say I'm very excited because it's the Mackcast, and we got an awesome guest. We promise to deliver awesome guests every single time the Mackcast comes on. I would like to kick it off with some Mack news. Currently on MonsterMack.net, we got a new episode of the Monster Mack Show, Season 2, episode number 8, question mark? I think I'm dead on with that one. On that one, we go through some of the history of Monster Mack. You get to see Monster Mack as a child, Monster Mack's great-grandfather as a Nazi for some reason. All kinds of wacky stuff going on in that episode. If you haven't seen it, check it out at MonsterMack.net, which you're probably on the page right now. Or you could be on iTunes. What could they be on? All kinds of websites. But MonsterMack.net is definitely my favorite for all your Monster Mack needs. If you haven't checked out that episode, also we got Brian Quits, the episode before that. Check that shit out if you haven't watched it already.
Mac, you keep plugging MonsterMack.net, which is down right now. I told you that already.
What are you talking about? I was on it this morning.
Were you really?
Oh, yeah.
You might be full of it, dude. I'm not going to lie. MonsterMack.net's been down. The old web dude called me and said that there was an issue with the server and blah, 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 blah.
Monster Mack fans, my apology if you're trying to go to MonsterMack.net and it's not working. But I was on it this morning, and it was awesome as always.
Well, Mac, tonight, for the Mackcast, since you already cut the Mac news, apparently all the Mac news is that we have a new video on the website. In Levesque's Log Cabin, we have a longtime friend of ours, a current Beyond Wrestling superstar. I'm going to say it, superstar.
Superstar might be a stretch, but I do appreciate the kind words.
Oh,
Thank you.
No problem, dude, no problem. Anthony Stone's in the house, and I want to pre-apologize to you, Anthony, and to the fans. I'm probably going to call you Bloodstone a whole bunch of times.
Oh, please, by all means. I'm not offended at all. Obviously, that's the name that I started off with and grew up with. If anything, we can educate, all the listeners here where the name actually came from, and you can call me Bloodstone as much as you want. But
I'm just saying it's probably going to slip out a few times.
That's perfectly fine.
Now, educating the wrestling fans is what we are all about here on the Mackcast, and that's why we had you down. We'll just kick it right off, because it's going to be a good one. So, first of all, I would just like to start. As a child, we always like to go back in time, bring you in the Mack time machine, go back. As a kid, when did you first find yourself getting into wrestling? What sparked your interest here?
My spark and interest with wrestling started at my grandmother's house. The very, very first pay-per-view that I ever watched was the Survivor Series featuring Hulk Hogan versus The Undertaker.
Okay.
That was my very, very first wrestling pay-per-view that I watched, and obviously it stood with me. But honestly, wrestling for me didn't really stand out then. That was the first event I watched and remembered. But it was right around 1994 when I really, really, really got into it and started watching, WWF and
on a regular basis.
Yes, on a regular basis. It pretty much started with the '94 Royal Rumble, and then I just got hooked ever since.
Just from then on, and like we know, you have some siblings.
Yes.
And I'm sure the grappling started in the living room.
Oh, it started in the living room, and then, of course, when Mom and Dad wasn't home, we dragged our mattresses outside and had our own little backyard thing with me, my two brothers, and, of course, my baby sister was part of that as well.
Now,
yes.
The actual mattresses that you were sleeping on at a night?
Oh, yeah.
Just drag them
just
outside,
wicked dirty, Obviously,
in.
they got really, really pissed off at us once they found out what we were doing, and then we stopped doing that, and we just... our backyard was concrete. Yeah. So we didn't really want to bump on concrete,
I hear that.
So that's why we brought the mattresses out, and then eventually we moved on to the backyard.
There
so that way
go.
we don't want to bump on concrete.
You're using their mattresses instead.
No. We didn't want to get in that trouble again, so we just stood with the grass.
So when did you and your brothers beating each other up on mattresses mold into RDW?
Well, I mean, well before RDW.
Oh, so there's pre RDW. See, I thought that was the deal.
Yeah.
I should know. Levesque's yelling at me. That's why I asked you to come sit on the couch.
I'm gonna fix the correction here, Levesque. But pre RDW, I would say that there were like a few different stages. The events I was talking about before with the mattresses, with my brothers and sister and our downstairs neighbor. We of course use a very generic KBYW, the kids backyard wrestling, and that was just our little thing. Eventually, once my older brother was into high school and met Levesque, that pretty much carried their interest and their friendship bonded around wrestling for the most part, to my knowledge. I'm sure there were other, similar interests and friendships or whatever.
It was just wrestling. It's okay to say,
exactly. It was just wrestling, and one day it boiled down to them wanting to have like a legitimate wrestling match. Now, I'm not really referring as like sports entertainment.
Right? Yeah.
They
started grappling each other.
Legitimate like shoot fight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we basically went to a buddy's side yard. It wasn't even a backyard. It wasn't even a front yard. It was like more like a driveway, and in Acushnet, Mass. Our buddy Eric, and basically, they started wrestling legitimately from there. And
was that the only match on the card?
I believe so. We had another like show, event, gathering, whatever you want to call it, like a little ways down the line, but that featured our buddy Lenny, who like probably retired right there and then, because to my knowledge, he's never wrestled again since then. But yeah, I'm pretty sure you and my brother Mercury were the only match on that quote card.
Scott Levesque v. Mercury in the brawl to end it all.
Yeah, because you guys were going for like an hour or so, man. Like, I mean, I don't know if you've ever legitimately watched like shoot wrestling, but it is so goddamn boring to watch. It is so goddamn boring to watch.
A lot of grappling on the ground.
No, right. Ultimately, from there, we discovered another backyard that we were allowed to use, and then we got friends of friends to join us, and then it was MEW, Main Event Wrestling, is what we referred it as. So that was pre-RDW. Obviously, we changed the name because we got a legitimate letter from the owner of Main Event Wrestling, and they told us to, cease us using the name.
Shit out, kid.
Yeah, pretty much, because they were going to sue us. Yeah, they were from Maine.
Wrestling.
Main Event Wrestling from Maine.
MAINE.
It's very catchy, isn't it?
I think there's a Main Event Wrestling now, too. I think they just reopened or somebody is running the same name.
I do remember seeing something on that on Facebook, actually.
I hope someone sends them a cease and desist order so they have to change their name.
Cease and desist order. Somebody's going to die or stop it.
Oh, man.
So when was it that you... See, you guys talked to your parents into letting you guys have a ring in your backyard? Was it your yard or? That's Scott Levesque's answer way later on.
All right, let's. I guess we can get to the story of where we actually transitioned from going from backyard to the ring, because
you were backyard wrestling then. What were you using as a name?
God, my very first name as a backyard wrestler, and I'm sure this was
Tony Larama.
No.
Damn it.
No.
It's giving me the finger.
It's even better. Laser Ramon.
Laser
Ramon. And my gimmick...
I love the spin-off gimmick.
And of course, because my gimmick was a crossbreed version of course, Razor Ramon and the Macho Man Randy Savage. Obviously, for Macho Man, for being as charismatic as he is, and probably one of the greatest gimmicks of all time, and as a young, inspiring wrestler that I was, I wanted to stand out, and I thought he always stood out, so that was where that came from. But after that, I called myself Domination Nick.
Okay.
For those that don't know, Nick is legit my shoot name.
Yeah.
So
you're ready to dominate, Nick.
I was ready to dominate, and I came out to the danger zone.
All right.
Because I wanted my opponents to fear me when I came out to the ring, even though I was a 110 pounds soaking wet, if that.
Did you still have abs back then?
Well, they were slowly developing.
Yeah.
I didn't really get the six-pack chiseled ab
Come on,
until
Nick.
I started getting into high school.
Everybody knows you were born with them abs, all right?
Well,
I seen
okay.
them baby
Now that the
abs.
cat's out of the bag,
All
yes,
right.
I had the six-pack.
Just say.
Right.
So when do you find yourself in RDW, and how does the whole ring come? Because I just want to say, big step up. It's in the backyard, but you're wrestling in a legit ring. That must have you must have had an advantage over some guys that were at that level at the time.
Well, yes and no, because like at that time we were all pretty much like on the same level. I mean, I was only 15 years old at the time, so like at least in my opinion, the guys that were better were the guys who were older because they kind of understood like the logics of a wrestling match. Not that they knew more, but they were older, so they kind of like got it like better than what a 15-year-old would. As far as the story goes, going from the backyard to an actual wrestling ring, our buddies Icebreaker and Mark Quinn, they ran into an associate of theirs, through the grapes and vines or however that happened, who was a independent wrestler at the time who just started to like break in and really kind of, getting his own name. It was Onyx, what he referred himself as. He was a member of
EOS, right?
Yes, the Elements of Suicide. And he came and checked out our show and was like pretty impressed for what we did for like wrestling in a backyard. At that point, we were in Westport, I believe, in Arthur Benoit's yard there.
No relation.
No relation to the that guy.
The other guy.
So we were invited to go to the Karoba, that was referred to as some rundown mills in New Bedford, Mass. And I remember the very walking up those stairs, and we saw the ring, and they had those gold like aprons there. It was like wicked shiny, and I'm just thinking like, wow, like that's a real wrestling ring in front of me. Like, you see it on TV, but like I'm sure everyone here can relate. When you see a legitimate wrestling ring for the first time, you're just like, oh man, like this is like serious. And it was at that very moment, Levesque, that I realized like my dreams are possible. To see a legitimate wrestling ring in front of me in my hometown of New Bedford, Mass, I was like, oh my god. Like that for me is like what really, really pushed me. I was like, all right, I know I can do this now. It's not just a dream.
I'm sure it blew your mind. You're like, there's a wrestling ring in New Bedford? Like, you're telling me I can get in a ring?
It's crazy, especially for a 15-year-old. I mean, like you go to the wrestling shows. We had Yankee Pro Wrestling there at the time, now referred as Top Rope Promotions. And you see the wrestling ring, but it's like you knew you weren't going anywhere near there.
Right.
Like you're gonna sit in the right behind the barricades, and that's about it. But to like, hey, here's a wrestling ring, and if you want to learn how to train, because that was one of the things they wanted to help us with, and like learn how to actually wrestle and try to become on their level, and maybe branch out to the independents. So that was like an unbelievable feeling. It's like, wow, like it was so awesome. It's so hard to put into words of how like happy and it was just great.
Now it was Onyx running a class almost, or?
Yeah, I mean they had like their own little training sessions that I will admit was very, very unorthodox.
Right.
It wasn't like, because their whole style was based on like ECW traditional like hardcore wrestling thing.
Shit gets
so
crazy.
Yeah, so I remember my first day there, and this is no bullshit here.
So you can say that on here.
Okay, I almost hesitated with that.
Feel free. You can draw whatever you want, man.
The very first day that I was there, and the very first thing that came out of their mouths, it was, okay, we need to learn how to properly take chair shots today. I swear to you, Levesque, this was how it went down. We were in the ring, and we, gave me the little waivers that I had to sign or whatever, which my parents didn't.
Please don't
I
sue us.
signed it, but I had to bring it home for it to be signed because.
First session, was I there?
I don't think so. It was on a Wednesday night. I don't remember you being there. It might have been just me and GQ are the only RDW guys that I can, because he was my ride. Those are the only two guys that I can remember being there.
My question is, how do you properly take a chair shot?
Oh, it's the old hand. The old hand put it up. You high five the chair. That's what I was told. You high five the chair. Not, I was still stupid enough years later.
So now you don't blame me when the crazy chainsaw bastard tried to hit me with that chair and I threw that one hand up.
You
Training
high-five
was like,
it.
No, I took that straight in the head.
So, Bloodstone, no bullshit. First training, chair shots.
Chair shots. We're not running the ropes. We're not learning how to take bumps. We're not learning, why we're in the ring and moving around and none of that fun stuff. It was chair shots.
Chair shots.
Like I said, it was unorthodox. I still laugh about it.
You got to get the hard stuff out of the way first, and then you can move on to running the ropes.
Right.
After you're concussed from the chair.
Yeah, well, I didn't get concussed from it, thankfully, because they showed me how to protect myself.
So-
But obviously, all jokes aside, for what it was for my starting grounds there, Mike Edwards, our original trainer, was there and to step in, and he was the guy who kind of built in basic fundamentals. One of the things that he taught me that I try to use to this day is to not repeat your match and not repeat your story, which I didn't understand at the time, but we see a lot of guys on sports entertainment and on television, and you can almost predict their match. You can almost know spot to spot, exactly what they're going to do is whoever they're wrestling with. So the one thing that he wanted to teach us was to be more unpredictable, because that's how they're going to get drawn to you. So
Especially on TV now, you can call a match each step of the match as it's going on before it happens. I don't know. I feel like every 7-minute television match is exactly the same as the one previous to it.
Now, how long were you actually training before you had your first match inside that ring?
Well, we were still doing our RDW stuff at the time,
I
because
see.
we were going there on Saturdays and we were renting out the ring so we could still do our shows or whatever. So I would honestly say, as far as training with those guys and before I even had a remote clue what I was doing, would have been 2 years. I wasn't I went to shows with some of those guys because they were also renting their ring out to NCW. Northeast Championship Wrestling, and I would help them set up and take down and do all that fun stuff. But as far as wrestling, okay, I started training in the winter of 1999, and before I even was considered in it, to use on any indie show, was 2001.
Okay, so 2 years of you. Now that was just Onyx and Mike Edwards. There were no other trainers coming through there at the time, or
well, other guys that they were associated with also chimed in and kind of helped in. Onyx's partner Cena.
Cena. Yeah.
He was there. Moko was another guy that was wrestled with. Postal Pete. A lot of those guys that were also training also just kind of chimed in
Helping,
and try to
yeah.
help each other, because that's what we were all there to do, is learn but also help each other.
So when did RDW then progress from doing the shows at the Karoba to again in a ring in your backyard?
You mean as far as going to when we went to Mike Edwards' yard?
Right, yeah.
Well, that only happened because the building got lost.
Oh, okay. I thought that you guys were still going there, training as you were doing the stuff on the side.
we were there for almost 2 years, I want to say, because we started in 1999, 2001. So we were there almost 2 years, and then for X, Y, and Z reason, the building was just getting demolished, and they were just getting rid of it completely. It's no longer there anymore.
Must be crazy to go by that area.
Yeah, that's where I started, guys.
There's nothing there.
But a little bit of a tidbit of history. I'm not even sure if Levesque knows this, but after the building got demolished, I went back and I grabbed one of the bricks.
That's cool.
And I, wanted, to keep it as a thing where I could say this is one of the building blocks that helped me, become a wrestler. This is where I started. It's no longer there anymore, but it's a piece of history that I wanted to keep with me.
Yeah.
So after that building got demolished and we moved into Mike Edwards' yard, because he was kind enough and generous enough to let us wrestle in his backyard.
Yeah.
We were still renting, the ring. Through SCW, and Eric Medeiros, one of the guys associated with them, was kind of the manager behind it. He would come and represent and collect the money and do whatever it was. So we pretty much were doing, our weekly shows every Saturday. We try to get there around 10, 11 o'clock, set up the ring, and then we'd spend our whole Saturday there. Our whole Saturday just wrestling.
Well, right now, like in the background, we're watching an old RDW tape. You guys seem to put in like a lot of graphics on the screen and stuff. Were you guys just doing that for yourselves? Were you putting it on like a public access deal, or?
Well, funny story about public access. Back when we were still in the backyard, we this is backtracking a little bit now, pre-Coroba stuff. We did try to go on public access.
Yeah.
We put together like a little 1-hour episode, and like, we used the editing room that they had at the time, and it wasn't perfect. I'm not gonna lie. For as good as what we were doing, we were trying to make it the best presentation that we could possibly do. Yeah. It only aired for, I believe the exact time was 1 minute and 16 seconds.
And then they pulled it.
Now, here's the thing. This is on a Monday night at 11 p.m., so it's not like anyone's really watching it, but the only thing that we had was it was right after Raw.
Right.
So
right after Raw, check out.
So right after Raw, we get checked out, and one of the first clips, it's a promo of one of our guys, Pat Masters, who was
Playboy Pat Masters.
IQ? He was IQ.
IQ.
Erwin Quincy of The Score, absolutely. So he was there, and I believe he was only 12 years old at the time. Now he's in a room with a gentleman who was 17 years old, so that already sets off a bad image.
Right.
And they're cutting like a mini promo introducing guys to the show and whatever. And then it gets shot. The next immediate scene that you see is one of our wrestlers, TDP, getting hit by a van that was driven by my older brother, Mercury. 1 minute and 16 seconds, I believe, was the exact time, and they cut the show off because supposedly a principal from the area called in and said, "You got to shut this off immediately."
That is crazy because where we do cable access, they pretty much let us do whatever the hell we want. They just push us at a later time slot.
Right.
Coming from 11 o'clock, I think that's acceptable to see a young boy get hit with a van.
Yeah, nothing.
Is that ever acceptable, Mac?
So now to kind of go forward to what we're watching here, this is as far as like the video editing that we got going on right here, that was just pretty much for our own amusement.
For yourselves.
That's for us, because when you really think about it, like we're watching video footage right now from 2001, and there's really no like Facebook, like it's around, but it's not as big as it is now.
Right.
Social media was like not really like a big thing.
Barely existed.
LiveJournal, okay,
at this time
was
I
the
think
big thing at that time, and that's what a lot of the wrestlers had was LiveJournal. So like we would all.
Mac had a LiveJournal, I know that.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, still up. I find it occasionally.
Oh, my LiveJournal's still up.
It's still up.
It's still up. I love to see what 17-year-old Bloodstone's posting about. It's so funny. It's so funny to see. But yeah, like as far as like our presentation goes, like we didn't really, and maybe this was a mistake on our part, or maybe this was a godsend on our part. It was we didn't really try to like after our incident with public access in New Bedford,
right?
We didn't really like branch out. Like the only thing that we did was there used to be an old wrestling forum called the Backyard Wrestling Link.
Okay.
And that was like the big website where all the big backyard promoters
post their videos.
They would post their videos and stuff like that, and we would just be like, hey, here's our website, because we had a website. It wasn't anything fantastic, but it was there, and we posted results.
Was it a GeoCities?
No, it was Angel Fire.
Angel Fire.
Okay. Angel Fire. Oh, one of the generic ones.
Oh yeah, of course.
one of the generic templates there, and all that fun stuff, and ads galore.
Oh, of course. So now we're in Mike Edwards' backyard. If people don't know, Mike Edwards wrestled Papa Shango on Raw.
Yes, he did.
I think that was his big claim to fame, right? Scott Levesque told me he was claimed by a guy who lost to Papa Shango.
Well, it's certainly a big accomplishment for any wrestler.
Oh, of course, to make it on
get
TV.
On
yeah.
TV and to like on Monday
Raw,
Night
yeah.
Raw. But yes, that was obviously like his highest scale that he went there. He's still considered to this day like a local legend around here.
Oh yeah,
the Manta Ray, man.
It amazes me. He must have loved pro wrestling so much. The fact that he's doing training enough and wrestling enough where he's on Raw and then like sees you guys and is like, come on, kids, I'm taking you under my wing. I'm going to show you how to do that shit.
And he didn't really have to because, still to this day, you have some veterans that kind of, like, keep to themselves and really don't want to try to help young talent. And, here was this guy who was, just really kind of, like, stepping out and be like, hey, like, try this elbow drop instead of that one. Add a spin to it. Because, again, his philosophy was you want to stand out, you want to be different, you don't want to do the same thing over and over and over again. That was, like, the very fundamental that he drilled into us. So the fact that, he took in a bunch of teenagers who were obviously just, whatever, goofing off or whatever, and tried to, make us, into actual wrestlers. Like, it was awesome.
And not only that, he opened up his yard to have us come in there with a ring.
Right, because
every Saturday. He saw something in us.
Right, exactly. Who's to say like what we would have done after that? Like when the Koroba died, and then it was like, oh well, okay, whatever. Like I was into hockey. All right, before I got into wrestling, I used to spend my Saturdays playing hockey. I wanted to be an NHL player.
Yeah.
So who's to say I wouldn't, be wrestling right now if that never happened and just wanted to play hockey? Like it's crazy to look back on little, pieces of history like that and just to think
that
like,
helped mold who you are.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So now we're in the backyard. You guys are getting trained. It's 2001. You start working other indie shows. I think 2001. That's PTW.
Well, that is actually where I met you guys.
Right.
Because right around that time, RDW had pretty much like officially folded. Mike Edwards and to keep a long story short, we just couldn't continue operations there.
Right.
And when I met you fine gentleman was in Fall River, Mass.
Using that term loosely, the gentleman.
Well, come on, you guys. Yeah.
But before I feel like I skipped. Is there anything like notable RDW, like notable moments that stick out in your head?
Oh my God! If we go into notable moments as far as RDW goes, we could
do
a whole podcast.
Is this going to be a 3-parter like Levesque? Is that what's going to go down?
Oh man, like I would love to, but I mean our scheduling conflicts.
Yeah. As I say, it's hard enough to get this one.
Like the fans might not know, but we've been trying to get this together for like a legitimate like 6 months,
if not more,
if not longer.
Point, yeah.
So like it's I'm finally glad that we're finally doing this, and I mean not to say I want to do it again with you guys.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If we want to do a podcast strictly on RDW, then we can do that.
We can bring in all the old RDW guys. We'll get Rage in here.
Oh my God, man! Oh, I would
we'll
love
bring
to
in Mercury.
Yeah. Oh, that would be fun, man.
It says this is a weekend, and this is gotta be some sort of I don't know, the first time ever, but Scott Levesque, Mack Attack, and Anthony Stone, no bookings on a Friday night.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
This is crazy.
There must be a blue moon or something, man.
And we just slapped this together, kind of almost not last minute, but the last couple days, right? Yeah. So we put this together. We're like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah.
No, I personally want to know. It's my accent. It's hard to. I personally want to know, like, what was your first professional with fans wrestling match, and tell me about it. What were you feeling at the time? Who opponent? What happened there?
Well, I debuted with Yankee Pro Wrestling in the Fisherman's Club in New Bedford, Mass. And I was pretty fortunate to make a debut with one of the guys from SCW that I was training with, who was... The idea was we were ultimately going to be tag team partners, but we had a singles match against each other. And we wrestled in a singles match, and it was Billy Brax. And I was the heel for whatever reason. I was chosen to be the heel, even though I had no business being the heel. I was the heel. And my idea, what I thought was going to, quote, draw heat, was they had a convenience store across the street. And I went and I'm a huge fan of Debbie Snacks, particularly oatmeal cream pies. I love that, can vouch for this one. And I thought...
That's a Trevor snack, too. I'm sorry. Trevor,
awesome.
You and Trevor sitting in a corner eating oatmeal cream pies together.
And I decided the best way to get heel heat... was to throw these Debbie Snacks at them because they were so fat that I was going to treat them with that. And that was, 16-year-old Bloodstone not having a clue what to do in the ring. But my first in front of live paying crowd was against Billy Brax.
Before you continue, if you would have thrown a Debbie Stack at me, I would have popped, all right? You wouldn't have
yeah,
good
you
heel heat
have to
for
pay
me.
25 cents for
I would have
these
been
things
all
now.
about it.
Oh God, they're 75 cents now. It's so crazy.
It's true.
The
price is
economy, look how
tripled.
bad it is. Like, Debbie snacks are like 75 cents.
But we're in RDW, working shows in Mike Edwards' backyard, and here's 16-year-old Bloodstone working Yankee Pro Wrestling shows. And I remember, I'm not sure like when, but I was invited by you to go to a Yankee Pro Wrestling Christmas party or something at the Sunshine Plaza.
Yeah.
And I think you got an award that day as Rookie of the Year.
Rookie of the Year. Yes, I did. I was very, very proud of that, because the promoter at the time, Joe Eugenio, they have their annual Christmas party and they give out the awards, best match, and and one of the things was best rookie. And what really, really made me proud was the fact that he openly said, I normally do never invite backyard wrestlers into my wrestling organization, but this kid is coming to trainings on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I used to, not that I lived that far, I was maybe like a half mile from my house, but my parents didn't really, it's not to say that they didn't support it, but they were always worried about my health and my well-being, so they didn't really push it. So in order for me to get there, I walked or jogged. That's how I got there. I wasn't old enough to drive yet, so the only way I was getting there was pushing myself to get there.
Now, I was just going to ask you, 16 years old, you get your first booking for Yankee Pro Wrestling. I was going to ask you how that all came about, but you pretty much just answered it in that last statement. Tuesdays and Thursdays, you're going to training. How long did it take at training, and what kind of trainers were there at the time?
The trainers there at the time were Nick Steele and Brickhouse Baker.
It's pretty much the universal answer for everybody that trained in Yankee at that time.
I mean, pretty much. Like the veterans kind of took turns. Chris Blackheart randomly would step in and do stuff. The Portuguese Stallion, who was a huge influence as far as like pushing me to get into the ring.
The Portuguese Stallion, another one of the ones that helped you out a lot, right, Levesque? He pulled you aside and kind of put you underneath his Portuguese wing.
Yeah. Well, again, a little bit of history here is when I was like, very young, like baby, like my parents asked him to babysit us.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Did he wear his
so
singlet?
that's how old the Portuguese Stallion is, by the
So
way.
when he seen them baby abs, he knew that he had a future star.
He's got to be in a wrestling
Yeah.
ring. He's got to be in a wrestling
I figured.
Yeah. But, he was the one that actually pushed me to get on the card, which, to answer your other question as far as how long it took me once I started training with them, I didn't get used on a show 6 months. 6 months of just Tuesdays, Thursdays, and 6 months straight before I was even considered to do a show.
Did you ever get discouraged in that time? Or were you just like straight, I'm going to keep at this until they put me in that ring?
I mean, my mentality at the time was I'm learning something new every day, and I live that as an adult. You learn something new every day. So when I was going to training, I was still doing my RDW shows on the side. So it wasn't like I was going to these trainings and not getting put in wrestling matches. So I wasn't being discouraged as far as, oh man, I'm putting all this hard work and they're not using it in their shows. I still go to their shows and we're kind of supporting it, but obviously my heart was where RDW was. And
you're training at Yankee Pro Wrestling, and I think me and a few others were there too, because I don't know if you remember this, but Mike Edwards talked to Joe about us because obviously Mike saw lots of potential in us, and I think Stallion came and scouted.
Yes.
And I think Mike and Portuguese Stallion tried to work out a deal with Joe where maybe we could be like a farm league for
Yes.
them. That's why all our guys went to their training.
Yes.
You remember that?
I do remember that. Not to say that I was, successful, but I always had the implant in the back of my head that maybe because of how I was being presented on shows and how I was being used, that it was an idea, because of, of course, Stallion, where it was like, well, maybe, and they had other guys that they were interested in using. Obviously, Bobby Biggins, who's on the screen here, he eventually made his way down there. They definitely wanted to
those
use...
guys stuck it out. You, Biggins, Pat,
Yes.
and other guys like me. Hey, I had this RDW bullshit on the side here. I'm not gonna be working my ass off every Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday when I got RDW every Saturday, and I could be a big star over there.
Right.
I was
Well-
delusional. Now you had the dedication, along with Bobby, along with Pat, to see, hey, this RW stuff is Bush League. I'm going to try to make it farther. And you guys did, especially you and Pat, and even Bobby Biggins.
Absolutely. And I'm sure, as you remember back then, Levesque, like with me starting to go down there and other guys, like you mentioned Bobby and Pat, like, and I hate using this word, but it does exist no matter where you go. Like, we had like little politics going on as far as like, I remember very specifically the very first Whaling City Festival I worked, which obviously is the weekend of July, and we were doing our RDW stuff, and I remember like there being quote heat about me choosing to wrestle on that versus RDW, and trust me, like, it was very hard, because like RDW was my home, and I still to this day consider it my home. It was my building, grounds there, and so it was very difficult, but like you said, man, like,
Who would you choose?
Who did I choose?
Yeah, on that Saturday afternoon.
Well, I chose Yankee Pro. I chose Yankee Pro. I mean, not to say that I missed RDW, but I mean, I'm wrestling in front of 500 people, and I'm living the dream that I want to do, is being, a professional wrestler. And, the stuff that we did at RDW, as much as fun as it was, we were starting to die out anyway. So I don't want to, stick with a dead plant when I can go and grow and gain new life and, start to earn a legitimate reputation. Like, I'll never, ever, ever knock RDW and what we did and what we were, but at the same time, I just wanted to grow as an individual. I
just wish I did the same thing you did, just stuck it out, and I could have been working Yankee Pro Wrestling just like you at 18, instead of 16 like you.
Right.
I remember there being an angle. I think Joe booked an angle where the backyarders were coming in and invading. Do you remember that angle?
Yes. Of course I
Sunshine
do.
Plaza.
I'll never forget that angle. We had Adam Impact come in and Bobby Biggins and even that kid. They were all being used as, like you said, as the invasion angle, because that was hot. Back then. You talk in 2001, the invasion angle legitimately just happened.
Yeah, just going down.
So, yeah. Yep, not working, but in the crowd, you're right. I wasn't working at the time, but the angle was legitimately shut down because of how hot it got. And I'm sure everyone's going to have their different point of views, especially Guy, who I believe was behind the book at the time. But it was, in my opinion, it was very hot. And, of course, we all went. So, of course, we all supported each other. And for the most part, not that we outranked or outdrew the actual paying audience, but when you got, like, 25 guys, and you're like, yeah, like, the crowd follows what the other crowd's doing.
Right.
So, they're like, oh, these guys must be cool. These guys are cheering them, you know what I mean? Like,
so you say that you feel like the angle got shut down because it was too hot? Like,
in my opinion.
So it was just brought to you that, hey, we don't think this is working, or were you guys booked to be the heels and you were getting over, or?
We're booked to be the heels and we're getting over because Mike Edwards' yard was not even a mile down the street.
Right.
So all of our boys were supporting our boys getting booked on a real show.
Yeah.
They were like, okay, these we're booking them as heels, as invaders, and they're getting cheered. Let's shut this down.
Now, did that spell the end of Yankee for you? Were you still working there, or were they just pull you guys from the shows completely?
At that moment of time, yes, that was pretty much like the end for Yankee for me. Again, not to really touch upon the politics issue that sometimes we deal with, but there was a conflict of interest of how I would be used, and I was going a whole year straight of having like matches and four-ways and doing all kinds of like really good cruiserweight matches, because I mean at the time Jason Blade and Mike Pava, they were really branching out, and their rage, the Yankee Pro rage, was really having like these phenomenal matches, and I was just starting to like really branch out and really like get into these matches and be a part of that. And what happened was, the book got changed around, and I was going from having these matches and these four-ways and these cruiserweight, showcase matches to just doing battle royals.
Yeah.
And that's, for me, is when it got, Mack. That's when, for me, is when it got discouraging, because here I am thinking, okay, I'm coming to training, I'm really busting my ass here, and I'm doing everything you guys want me to do. But all of a sudden, I'm just having these matches, and I'm getting, having these battle royals and nothing more, and not being like even hinted at, like, oh, well, we're gonna build something up for you or whatever. Like I was legitimately they had a hardcore title at the time. I was legitimately on a run to have like the hardcore title in my possession, and they were shot down immediately, and it was just like, okay, like here I am thinking I'm gonna get this, like my first, like, as far as independent wrestling goes, that's my first real
belt,
push, and it just kind of got taken away from me. So that's when I got discouraged, and ultimately found PTW through my RDW buddies.
Now, before we go into the PTW stuff, you mentioned earlier that PTW is where you met us.
Yes.
You might not know this. I actually met you at Yankee. I was well before wrestling. I was like a ring crew camera guy at like 14 years old.
Oh man.
And I sat in the back of a wrestling truck with you one time, and I don't know if we'd spoken. I remember you talking about writing a book about backyard wrestling. I don't know if you recall that. Not specifically meeting me or anything like that, but you were going to write a book about backyard wrestling. You wore you were wearing like a black thing over your face. Had like like almost a Hannibal Lecter kind of looking deal at the time, and you were doing like battle royals. No, he was.
Yeah. No, I have never used High Wind outside of RDW.
But I met you, and you were doing a battle royal for a Yankee show in New Bedford. That was the first time I met you. I just wanted to throw that random fact out there. I remember specifically you talking about writing the backyard wrestling book at the time.
Well, let's say when we formally met.
Yeah, of course.
All right, we'll use that.
So we're gonna jump over to PTW, which is out of the Ankle Plaza in Fall River, right?
Before we jump into that, I would like to say my first memory of Bloodstone or Anthony Stone was you helping out the PTW guys with training. And I remember you had this Robin Dam training guide. Well, that's my main memory of Bloodstone. No? All right, I'm going to kick it back off the training then.
What you're talking about, dude, it's like 4 or 5 years apart from each other.
When we get to that, you say, now, Mack.
All right, no problem, dude.
Just to go back to RDW, backtrack a little bit.
No, Scott Levesque, no.
When you were getting booked, along with Pat Masters and the guys that actually stuck around for those Yankee Pro Wrestling trainings, when jobbers like me were like, screw this, I'm a superstar at RDW. Was there any heat at RDW for you missing shots because you were working Yankee Pro Wrestling?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There was just like immediate tension, going to like the RDW shows, and I mean I'm sure we had our stupid A team, B team, fuck.
B team
Oh
here.
man. Well, let's just say I was quote on the A team, and then I converted onto the B team after I started working Yankee Pro, because now people are thinking like, oh, you're too good to wrestle for RDW, which that was never the case, because whenever I could go to the RDW shows, I did, but like here I am, 16 years old, doing like all these road shows, and let me tell you, for Yankee Pro Wrestling, that was a rarity for new guys to do road shows, because those were their like good paying shows. Not that I was getting paid really well, but it was still more than the $10 I would get from wrestling at the PAL or New Bedford. Like it was a little bit more, just a little bit more, but it was still something.
Exactly. I just remember at an RDW show, I was giving Pat Masters shit because he was working Yankee Pro Wrestling.
Yeah.
I just look back on that now, like, man,
what
a mark.
I think the thing that really pissed off a lot of those guys there is that we not to say that I had
We're so loyal to each other. That's why.
not only that, but if you remember correctly, we started wearing our Yankee Pro gear at RDW. Bobby Biggins was wearing his singlet, and Pat Masters was wearing his stuff. Big league, and so here we are, all the RDW guys, like no one really has gear. Like the thing we got close to gear is elbow pads and custom made T-shirts that like Lindsay would make. What Michael Thorne's wearing right now. But then here we are wrestling gears. We got ASICs, we got wrestling shoes. Some of them have wrestling boots. I was like, wow, what do you like? That's when it really like I was saying, the tension like really built, and It was awkward at times.
It was, but I think as RDW, we branded ourselves as like an alternative to Yankee Pro, and here we are, like the top 2 stars of RDW, you know, like working for them now. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying. Like, if anything, I thought, in my, like, how I looked at it is like we could have been like, you know, the crossing bridge for guys that wanted to take it more seriously. Like, hey, you know, like, we're here. You
Man,
guys
I wish I was one of those dudes, man.
Well,
Wrestling at Yankee Pro at 18, 19 years old.
You weren't
guys
the
did.
only one. I mean, look at you know, our Rage, and look at, you know, William Thorne, and look at Messiah. Like, we had Terrence Thomas, Icebreaker. We had so many guys that if they wanted to, like, you know, cross over and go Yankee Pro, man, you know, like, and Icebreaker did do the RDW angle, but like he never stood with it after that. But it was one of those things, man, where, you know, Mark Quinn. Could you imagine Mark Quinn as charismatic
Oh my
as he
God,
was?
so much potential training, so much. Mark Quinn, Terrence Thomas, Biggins was already booked, but Tay, Messiah, huge man, Byron Bangkok,
Yep.
all these dudes, if they just like devoted themselves, just like you did, and just like Pat, and just like Biggins, you know, who knows what could have happened.
Who knows? But obviously life has its turns and people's interests change, and obviously people get older and they like to party and hang out with the women, and all kinds of different things happen. So it is what it is, you know?
Bloodstone, shoot right now. Bottom of the barrel talent in RDW as far as basics go.
Bottom of the barrel? Are we talking about legitimate wrestlers or anybody in the roster?
Anybody on the roster. Who's the bottom of the barrel
The bottom of the barrel.
as far as talent?
Oh, as far as talent goes. Okay. Are we talking?
I'm not trying to shit on anybody. I'm just trying to like.
Yeah, I mean, like, are we talking about a
This guy right
specific
here.
era?
This guy right here.
No, God, no,
Give
absolutely
me the
not.
microphone, Levesque.
Shut up.
Get out of here.
You were definitely a mid-cutter, if not bottom of the barrel. I'll give you.
RDW was okay, but I mean.
Levesque, you introduced promos and vignettes
sounds
to
like you.
RDW, you know?
As far as pure talent, I didn't have it.
Oh man.
All right, we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, Bloodstone.
All right.
Let's move on to PTW.
Yeah.
How did that all come about?
Our RDW compadres, that kid and Enmity. I don't know how they became associated with you guys at the time, but they were the ones who basically said, hey, you know, if you still want to wrestle, because I was pretty much done with Yankee Pro
Yeah.
Wrestling. Here's this place in Fall River.
Now, was that a decision that you made? Like, I'm just sick of getting jerked around with these battle royals and I'm outie, or were they just saying like, hey, we don't want to use you anymore?
That ultimately that was the case, because as disgruntled as I was, I still wanted to at least make an effort and show
Yeah.
that I'm trying. But then when this door of opportunity opened for me, I was like, well, I'm a little curious, so I'm gonna check this out. So that's when I went down.
So pretty much you got the contact through a former friend of yours or another wrestler.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You might be still friends with him. I don't know if he's a former friend.
I
but-
still associate with them. Yeah. I mean, not so much with that kid, but Enmity. You know, I still talk to him every once in a while. Yeah.
So tell us about your first match in PTW and how things went and what your overall experience was compared to Yankee Pro Wrestling.
God, I'm not gonna lie. That might be a little bit of a stretch for me. I remember.
You don't have to recall the match, dude.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, I want every spot in that match. No, I'm
You
just
weren't.
joking. I
The
just want
theme
the
music
overall,
I came out to.
overall experience, and it was from Disturbed. I'm guessing it was a song from Disturbed.
Voices. That I definitely remember that specifically.
Yeah.
But I mean, the experience and the overall reaction that I had when I first kind of like went with you guys was it was a refreshing start.
Right.
You know, and
Back to a lot of young kids who are hungry and want to do something.
exactly, and not to say that I knew a lot, because I was only 17 years old now.
Right.
Maybe just barely 18 years old.
Yeah.
And not to say that I knew a lot, but like I thought, with these young kids, like what was the same opportunity that was given to me, I could have kind of not passed the torch, but at least shared what I knew at the time.
Yep.
Again, it's not a whole lot at all, but I just wanted to help out, and at the same time, you guys kind of like opened the door for me and said, hey, if you want to wrestle here, then you can wrestle here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was kind of like a two-way street, at least that's how I put
Now,
it.
at that time, I believe RDW guys, it was like you, Thorn, Icebreaker, worked there. I'm trying to think who else. The Izzy High or whatever is the two high guys. I can't remember.
Yeah,
the name.
that's
Randy.
that kid. We call him that kid and Enmity. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
They were there. I'm trying to think how it was like a whole RDW. You guys all came over like one time kind of thing.
I don't know if we came over
You guys
all
all
at
just
once.
trickle in randomly.
Yeah, I think like they were the first two to discover that group, and then they introduced me, and then I slowly talked about it, and we kind of like slowly kind of migrated there. Because I mean, not a lot of us went there, but like it got to a point I remember where we had like our own little quote RDW circle.
Right.
Because we had like Icebreaker eventually come in, we had Mark Quinn come in, William Thorne, started working with you guys.
So we're going to go the Ankle Plaza. I think they only ran like 4 or 5 shows there, and they moved from there to the Durfee Union Mills. I think it was like the 4th floor, like a random mill in the 4th floor.
Yeah.
And I think that's when I really, like me personally, I started really getting to know you guys and all that stuff. But I think that was like the main time of like the quote unquote RDW guys. Were you getting like a lot of like heat from the ACW guys, your Mack Echoes, your Havocs, Demons? Did you feel any tension from those dudes or?
Me personally, no, because like I always try to, try to get along with everyone there. Because my point of view was like you guys were giving me like a refreshing opportunity to do something that I love doing, and it was kind of like a new start for me. So I mean, at least in my opinion, I never tried to like, push the envelope as far as like, being with certain groups and cliques and stuff like that. But I'm pretty sure there was like an obvious like, hey, here are these like RDW guys, and they're slightly trained, so they might be a little better, and they have an attitude about it, and it was like an afterthought that I had in the back of my head,
Right.
which I mean, again, I never tried to like choose a side. Because I would hang out with you guys and shoot the shit and be like, hey,
Now, at the time, there was a lot of like different federations coming in, and I think that was ultimately why PTW changed to Alliance Championship Wrestling. Is that correct, Training?
I think that's because Dave had like you guys with the RDW, and then me and Mack and all those dudes was like EAW, and then he had his ACW guy, so it became like Alliance. We all aligned. And it's funny that you mentioned that whole like those guys are slightly trained and this kind of heat thing, because we kind of got the same thing. Because around that time, like we had all maybe it's maybe because we were around with those guys. Yeah, you guys had your own deal going on. We were like there all the time. Yes, there was man. There was a lot. They would anytime arguments would happen about anything, it would be like, well, those guys think they're better because they were trained, and whether they were talking about you guys or talking about us, some of us had just started training at Yankee at the time. And
I know one of the events that really stood out that maybe kind of started steering the pot as far as that whole thing was concerned was William Thorne wrestling the franchise in that Iron Man match that they had, and like here he is like in your circle he's a newcomer, but for us he's from RDW,
right? Yeah.
And here he is like winning our belt. Like I think that's, I could be wrong, but I think that's when it kind of really started like, wait a minute, like why is he getting the belt? I've been a loyal guy forever.
Right, yeah.
That was the first thing in my opinion that like stood out as far as like that going.
At that time, like you were saying, like with the cliques and everybody kind of breaking off, I feel like I got along more with you guys than I did the other guys. With like Paul, yeah, those
right.
The franchise Brian Sayers and the Demons and the Mack Echoes. I got along with you guys way more than I did them, and I think it was again you say because of the training aspect behind it, because we all knew like you should learn some more and not just kind of go out there and like I don't want to call him out right now, but I don't think franchise Brian Sire has 1 day of professional wrestling training.
Partial days.
Little pieces here and there. Yeah, like an hour and a half of taking hip tosses here and 15 minutes of drop toe holds there. But I'm sorry, Nick's shaking his head. I didn't mean specifically to call anybody out. It's just the way I feel about the scenario.
You brought up like William Thorne being brought in to PTW at the time to like win the belt from Brian Sire in the main event. I think that same day I was brought in a dark match, and I continued to be brought in dark matches.
Well, we had to see what you had, kid. You know what I mean? Can't just
But,
throw you on the show, Jesus.
To me, it was just like some place to work besides RDW, you know? Like, I don't know who had the book. I don't know who put William Thorne in those championship matches to win.
I just.
I think it was William Thorne that had the book.
I was gonna chime in and say I'm pretty sure, again, that was the specific reason why.
Well,
Right.
Scott Lebeck, I think the tassels brought you a long way, and you actually got a permanent spot, so you shouldn't be complaining.
So we move from PTW over to the Angkor Plaza. You start wrestling for ACW on a regular basis. Are you wrestling anywhere else at the time?
No.
So it's just ACW, and I think when we were doing the Mills, it was like every weekend, wasn't it? Almost every other weekend, if not more. And I feel like you got the RDW guys got that stigma, like we were talking there earlier. But hold on, Levesque's pointing.
You brought the stigma. Did you guys feel there was a stigma?
What, between me and you guys?
No,
or?
like as a whole. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Why
yeah.
though?
I
'Cause
don't know,
think
man.
we got brought in like with big heads or anything, you know?
Like I say, man, like at that time when they would have like open rings, like 2 or 3 days a week, we'd go there and guys like Dave would be there and Paulie and all those dudes, and you would hear like complaining about. I don't know, man, and it was always just like there was heat, not just on you guys. I don't know. The whole situation was very strange back then. Dave Oliveira was
I think looking back at it now, it probably was just a big giant case of just like the maturity level
Right,
of
everybody was
everyone there.
all,
Because a lot
under
of
20.
the RDW guys were just entering adulthood.
right.
And a lot of the PTW, ACW guys were still kind of young
Teens, yeah,
teenagers. So it was kind of, looking back at it, that's probably just what it boiled down to, was just a giant like maturity case of, here are these guys, we want to be the superstars. And it's not like we tried coming in, to be like the main event or whatever, but we were the guys that had the experience, and all we were trying to do, from my point of view, again, like obviously guys look at differently with William Thorne, and like, here's this guy wrestling an Iron Man match and winning our belt, and he's not even like a month in and he's got this, so I'm sure that's a different ball game depending on who you ask.
Right.
Like in general, it was just like I wanted a new place to wrestle. I thought I can help you out, and the bottom line is if we all help each other and make a good show, then everybody wins.
Right.
Obviously, people had different opinions on it.
So you, go ahead, what were you going to say, Levesque?
From my point of view, at the time, at the Angkor Plaza, PTW, RDW just shut down. Me and Nick were just like looking for places to work.
Right,
and I was just happy. I was happy working those
to be
dark
there,
matches with Carlos V with those big ears. Working those dark matches back to back. I had no big head, and I was just like, another place to work because RDW shut down.
Right. So ACW is around. You're there. You're working on a regular basis there. You had a couple falling outs with ACW over the years.
There was definitely some cases where falling outs happened. I don't know, the first time I really don't remember like the specific reason why.
Right.
But I remember just like being like, all right, I'm all done with this place.
Right.
I'm completely, done with wrestling here, and I think maybe, at the time, and now we can chime into what you were talking about earlier when I was trying to, legitimately run some training classes.
Right, and that was the VFW, right?
Yeah,
the
the
Hall
Fall
of
River
Fame.
VFW.
Yep.
Now, let me chime in on this book that you were talking
Yeah.
about, because that got me some heat. That got me some
Mack,
heat.
Now
yeah.
is when we can talk about the Van Damme training book.
Yes, yes.
So you had this Van Damme training book. I don't know too much about it. I just remember in my memory that you were trying to help out a few different guys, and you had a book that had Van Damme's picture on it in the front. Tell us a little about that training guide.
Why there was random heat.
Well, the training guide is exactly what it was. It wasn't a book, quote, how to wrestle, as
Yeah, it was like a lot of like workout tips and
it was
stuff like that, right?
workout tips and all the different training drills and sessions and exercises that I had learned through my time of training in different groups of circles, and I put it together on a 3-ring binder.
Yep.
To be like, hey, we could do this, and I ranked them as far as difficulty goes and like what they worked on as far as cardio, ring awareness, positioning, bumping, whatever.
And this is 2005, roughly, right?
Yep.
So you're already 6 years in at this time.
Yeah.
So you're thinking like, I'm gonna try to help some of these kids out, and I mean. Dude, I remember specifically, it would be before shows or whatever, and it would just everybody be running drills and doing all that good stuff. Where was the heat coming from?
The heat was coming from Paul Lombardi.
Okay, so
He had
I didn't even realize that.
He'd politely, and I will say this to this day, he was quite professional about it.
Lombardi's a polite dude, I'd say.
He politely pulled me to the side and had mentioned this book and was, very disgusted in, my methods and just, basically trying to, shoot on me and saying like, there's no book how to wrestle, this and that and the next thing. And that's when I tried to correct him and said, well, it's not a book how to wrestle, it's just all different exercises and drills and...
Your personalized view and how to condition yourself.
Exactly, and that's all it was, and they were just different things that I wanted, these kids to try out and that knew right, exactly. But he took it like, I was writing this book on how to wrestle, and,
right.
So from his point of view, I'm only 6 years in, barely, so like,
right, yeah.
I'm still green, like you're still considered green for the first 5 years that you actually wrestle, and not to say that I did, like, I had maybe under 100 independent dates at that time. I was still very green. So from his point of view, I understood where he was coming from. But I just simply wanted to correct him and say, dude, I'm not trying to teach people how to wrestle. I'm showing them different drills and how to bump and how to get up the right way. And the things that I legitimately knew what I was doing, I was teaching. I wasn't teaching psychology. I wasn't teaching match structure. I wasn't teaching character development. I wasn't teaching promos. I was saying, hey, guys, if you want to learn stamina, these are some drills that's going to help you out. And I remember, like, to this day, like, he never really bothered with me again. And it was like, I don't understand why, but there was heat.
Do you think it was because it was like the Van Damme picture on?
Probably. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a huge Rob Van Dam mark.
That was 10 years ago.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was a long time ago too, man. But see, that's it's funny that you mentioned that it was Lombardi. When you said that, like a bunch of memories like flooded my head.
I think RVD.
You think stamina? You think RVD?
Oh God, because like
The man's a machine.
He was the king of like 40-minute matches of like insane hardcore springboards, spinning heel kicks to the. Oh man, that's why I loved him, because he was so innovative.
Number 2 on the cover. This man right there.
Oh man, hey, jeez.
Scott Levesque dropping that knowledge. He's
Wow.
putting you up there. That's a high ranking
That's
there.
it's wow.
So, Mack ahead, dude.
You probably would have got a little more heat though if you put yourself on the cover.
Oh,
instead
my
of
God.
Van Damme, but.
Yeah, right. Although the second page, I wrote an introduction. I did write an introduction, but again, in the introduction, it was explaining what the book was about.
Like
I'll have to print it again.
Like, I don't have too much memories of it now. It's a blur to me now. But I just remember seeing that, and it was just... I think it was really the Rob Van Dam on the cover. It was just like, what is this? You know what I mean? He has this Rob Van Dam trading guide. But now that you, like, finally, years later, you know what I mean? 10 years later, you explain it to me, and it totally makes sense. You know, you're just trying to really help the guys out, but... I think it was the Rob Van Dam on the cover that was the heat was coming from.
It had to have been. It had to have been.
That's what got you the heat. RVD on the
Rob Van
RVD got
Dam,
you
man.
that. So that was around, you said, the time that you had your first falling out with the ACW thing. I think that was around the first time that I got to wrestle you for one of the first times that we had a match. I actually watched it
God.
kind of recently. Not that bad, man, for real.
How about the angle? You and Strider teaming up.
Oh yeah, you and Strider were a tag team. Oh, big smile.
Love it,
Yeah, you
love
had
it,
the Hawaiian
love it.
shirt,
I
you
did have the
some
Hawaiian
dancing.
shirt. Basically,
How was that pitched to you and by who?
it was pitched by William Thorne,
Yeah.
and basically, it was just, we need this guy to be in a tag team, and give him a
Strider
rub.
was brand new at the time.
brand new. Oh my God, this kid was greener than grass.
Still is. I'm just joking, Strider.
You meant still wrestling. That's what you meant.
I meant not still green, Strider. I'm just joking.
No. And yeah, it was basically a favor. Like, hey, like, I get it. It's not exactly your idea what you want to be doing, but
This is not the ideal scenario.
but help him out. And me being the team player that I feel I've always been, and that's how we were brought up with Mike Edwards. It was pitched to me like, hey, be a tag team.
yeah.
Ultimately, we became known as Stepping Stone.
Okay.
And going back to that match that we had.
Did you and Strider beat me and Mack for the tag belts?
I'm
Or vice versa?
pretty sure you guys went over. I mean, you watched it recently.
I watched the singles match we had.
Oh,
Yeah,
the singles
me
match.
and you
I
had a
did.
singles
I did like
match.
the singles match. I did like the singles match.
I wish I had that tag match somewhere because there
think-
was one.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure in the tag match you guys went over.
Okay.
But I do remember a very specific spot that I was like incredibly proud of, and I thought like, hey, let's do it because I don't ever remember it happening. Where you had me up in the screen machine. I was like basically sitting on your shoulders. And
Yeah.
At that building, they had that
man.
low roof.
Yes.
Like drop there. It wasn't like it was a weird little.
It's like a beam, like a random beam.
just across the middle of the thing. And I was like, hey man, like I'm gonna work you, just run into it, and my head would hit it. And
I do remember that spot. Oh
like,
man, that's great. That's
see,
hilarious.
See, here I am thinking, like in every match that I
You're
try to
thinking outside the box, like
Yeah.
you're like, no, just I'll be working on you. I'll hop on your shoulders. You just run forward, and I'll take the beam. Oh man, that's great.
and to this day, as far as that match goes, that was my favorite spot.
Yeah, dude.
Because like you said, it stood out. It was different. You're using your environment as a weapon, and William Weagle is infamous for doing that with the famous like slip off, pull the apron off, the guy gets stuck, and you help him. Like that was like the type of things that I wanted in my matches. Was that so?
When we brought you down for the Mackumentary filming, I believe you actually told that story
Yeah.
during it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's funny. I haven't. Oh man, I have to find that match somewhere.
That'd
I
be
gotta go
great.
looking
I
for
would
it.
love to rewatch that one.
And the singles, we had a singles match. Mac, you worked like Strider that same night, and me and you like did a swaparoo under the ring and stuff like that. I don't know if you remember. But me, I remember I was told like you're wrestling Bloodstone tonight, and at that time I used to like get you still do, you get a little nervous before the matches or
Oh,
whatever.
absolutely.
But when I found out I was wrestling you, I wasn't nervous at all. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna go talk to him. We'll figure out what the deal is, and then we'll do it. And like that was one of the first good matches I had, and I just want to say thank you for that, man.
Oh, and thank you for the match in return. Because you were obviously one of the guys that like were getting it.
Right.
Like, like there was a lot of guys there that were still like learning the ropes or whatever, but you were kind of like ahead of the curve.
You guys were training with Bob.
Yeah.
It's good. Yeah, at the time we were going to Slam Tech, we were doing a lot of random brick house trainings and stuff at the
Right,
time. But
right.
again, that kind of goes to the whole like we were trying to learn. We would kept trying to learn the things. So yeah, your first falling out, you don't specifically remember what happened.
I don't specifically remember what happened.
I'm sure it was some kind of debacle with Dave Oliveira. I'm sure.
Oh,
Was that
no,
it? You didn't
was-
wanna
that
put over
wasn't
Strider?
That wasn't that. I mean,
You
I
didn't-
I said I would team with the kid, so obviously I didn't.
Turn on you though?
No,
I don't remember.
I
a
don't
turn.
remember a heel turn per se. I just think like I stopped wrestling there for X, Y, and Z reason.
They pitched Strider.
They pitched Strider going over.
And maybe that was it. I was like, oh no.
Yeah, you're like, I'm out of here.
That's it.
Screw this.
I'm completely kidding, Strider. I obviously had no quarrels with you.
So you take some time off from ACW. Are you done with wrestling in general at that time?
At that point in time, yes. I was legitimately going to stop wrestling altogether, and the reason for that was I had the birth of my first son, Xavier.
Yep.
I made a personal life choice a long, long time ago when I ultimately decided I don't want to be the wrestler that has a broken family because I wrestle. I said I want to be a professional wrestler or I want to be a family man.
You took 9 months off while your girl was pregnant.
Yes,
I
I did.
remember that.
Yep. And after Xavier was born, I was going to quit cold turkey.
Yeah.
And maybe that was like the legitimate
the
reason
reason,
why.
yeah.
But I know there was some I don't know, maybe
some sort of drama.
Maybe it was the politics or the people, the whole RDW circle thing. I don't remember specifically, but
Right.
I know for a fact when my son was born, I was like, all right, I'm done, cold turkey. I quit wrestling altogether, and it was ultimately due, and I still say this to this day, Ashley, she was the one who ultimately convinced me and said,
stay in
you're
wrestling.
not the same. Like I fell in love with Bloodstone, the wrestler, and there's a part of you that's missing. And we got into this real, like, deep emotional talk about it.
Right.
And ultimately, she was like, go back to what you love doing. So that's kind of the story of how I decided to go back to
come back.
ACW. Yeah.
Now, when you came back to ACW, was it still at the VFW hall, or had we moved already?
I believe you guys were at Somerset then.
It was already at the soccer center?
Yep. I believe you guys probably just started Somerset when
No.
I started getting back.
I have two big memories of Bloodstone from the soccer center.
Oh, yeah.
Number one was you and Mercury in a hair versus hair match where you both shaved your heads. And
Yes.
You kind of did. You guys, there was like a ladder involved and shit got like crazy.
Wicked crazy. More crazy than it needed to. He ended up going to the hospital legitimately
That night,
after
really?
that.
Jesus Christ.
Because he was so broken and torn and sore and bloody nose and scrapes and scars to this day.
Does it say there you are right there on the TV?
Yeah, a young version of Bloodstone right there. Wrestling Scott
Levesque,
Levesque, I believe.
Wearing jean shorts. Oh, yes.
Oh.
It's
We
hassles.
found Cherry. She was with us.
The big storyline.
Oh, yeah. She wanted to...
Oh,
God, I'm not
We're
going to get
going
into
a little
that.
back in time here. You're getting a little nostalgic. Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, that match in particular, yeah, it was a little too crazy for my life.
Yeah, a little too
too crazy.
How did your brother get back involved? Because I know when you were doing the stuff at the VFW, he was like managing you. I don't know if he was wrestling that often.
No, he wasn't really wrestling that often, and I think through the powers that be, we kind of pushed the angle where I wanted to do a series.
You were crazy at one point. You got dropped on your head by Casey Shooter. Powerbombed you in the apron or something.
Yes.
And it started.
We relived an old RDW angle where I was a schizophrenic.
Okay.
And we were going to basically make it reborn in ACW. Yes.
And you were like, did you have a match against nobody? Did that happen?
That did happen.
Okay.
That
actually-
legitimately did happen.
That was my memory of it, but I didn't actually think the match actually happened. I thought you were pitching the idea, but that really did happen where you wrestled the imaginary opponent.
Yes.
I know.
Awesome.
I know the Invisible Guy was doing run-ins on your matches, like you
Oh,
were
yeah.
getting flipped off the top rope during your match and stuff like that.
Yep.
Now that was an old RDW idea that
That-
you guys rehashed.
Yep. Because basically, to kind of give a little backtrack history there, our Rage basically powerbombed me from the inside of the ring to the outside. And what happened was when I hit the table that was on the outside, it didn't break. I bounced off the table, I hit the apron, and I hit the ground. So that's what kind
That
of...
sucks, dude.
Oh, it was wicked bad. Wicked bad.
So you do that angle. Now, is that what it ended up being? Mercury was behind it the whole time? Because in my head, that's how I created this. That's the storyline I wrote. You got bumped on your head. You went crazy. You thought there was somebody after you, and it just turns out it's your brother who looks a lot like you.
As far as storylines goes, that's probably exactly how it went.
Okay, yeah.
He wanted to help me out, and I was crazy, and I was like, don't go near me or whatever. And we ended up doing this little best of 3 angle thing. But obviously behind the scenes, it was kind of like hey, let's push me and Mercury to kind of have a best of 3 series.
Yeah.
So.
Now after that, that you have a falling out with Dave again, and
Now,
this time you specifically remember the situation here.
Oh
was
yeah,
leaving the ring out in the rain.
Oh, let's give the whole story here.
Okay, yeah.
So after my
I just wanted to make sure I was on the right track.
my side of the story anyway. So after that insanely hardcore match that we were just having, where both my brother, me and my brother had our heads shaved, we were obviously.
Was that the same night?
That was the same night.
Oh man, I didn't even. So that's okay. So I'm sorry. Continue.
It was the very same night because we had the 2-ring show because we were doing it at the Deadly Encounter event,
right?
Where the main event was 2 rings and the complicated match that me and
Shit
Thorne
went
came up
crazy,
with.
yeah.
And I still liked it to this day, but it was confusing from a fan's point of view. But pretty much the arrangement that I had made with Mr. Oliveira was, after the show was over, that we would, bring the ring back and everything was set, because he wanted to bring the truck back that night because it was another rental or whatever. And I specifically went to him and said, listen, obviously I'm in no condition to do this right now. I'm hurt. I will pay you all the late fees. I will pay all the gas, and we'll do this tomorrow morning. It will be out of my pocket. That you won't have to pay a dime, and I'll do all the labor. I'll bring my ring back to where our training facility was at the time. I'll bring the truck to Fall River. I'll drop it off or whatever. I could bring it to you. And he just wanted absolutely no part of it. And from my point of view, I was like, I don't get it. Like, you're not losing a dime out of this deal.
Right, yeah.
Like, you're not worried about this. Like, what is the big deal about it? So we ended up going to IHOP because, like, well, if we're going to do this, I'm going to go out to eat. Like, fuck it.
Right, yeah.
Like, I was already upset. I was very hurt at the time. And I remember sitting there at IHOP, and I got a phone call, and that's when I found out that he had drove to Fall River. Oh, sorry. From Fall River to from Somerset
to New Bedford. Yeah.
And was basically unloading the ring. Not even at the training facility, because he obviously didn't have the keys, but just outside. And it was, like you mentioned, it was pouring rain down.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, that's a $5,000 ring. Like, you're just
leaving
out in the middle of, like, the south end of New Bedford, which did not have any good reputation by any means.
Right, yeah.
So I was beyond pissed about that. Like, oh my God, I was so heated about it. Which I'm sure we'll go into the next incident that I'm sure you love.
Especially, I can imagine where you would be pissed because you're busting your ass with your brother, putting on a good show for this guy, and that's pretty much what you get in return.
Right, exactly. And obviously, I'm not getting paid, because I'm just doing this as a favor and me wanting to wrestle and, do all that fun stuff. But I'm looking at it like, all right, I just killed myself for you, and I'm offering you to pay all late fees, to do all the physical labor. I just want to do it tomorrow morning or tomorrow during the day or whatever. And for whatever reason, he was like butthurt about it. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, like, what's the big deal? Like, sometimes I look at it to this day and I still don't get it.
Yeah.
But it's like, hey, man, it's old water under the bridge now. So, like, it's whatever now. But, oh, man, I was pissed.
Speaking of water under the bridge, I believe this next incident that we're going to talk about has something to do with a little bit of some Monster Mack and training number one and everyone involved in this room. So I'm going to use the bathroom before we get onto this, but training one's going to kick it off.
All right, yeah, I'll kick the story off. So you leave, you're all done. Now you take a couple months off. Is that what it was before the big?
I know. I think it was a couple months. It was a couple months. Yeah.
And Scott, you handle it.
So you're gone during this time, dude. William Thorne leaves. Mark Quinn leaves. They were booking at a time. I'm the champion. I've been the champion for a while. I'm sure as hell I'm not going to let Dave and William Bullsworth book this shit. I'm taking the book. I'm going to steer this ship. So I'm booking and filling the gaps here.
So you're booking the shows, right? You say William Thorne left. Doesn't Thorne come back? Thorne comes back, doesn't he? See, I thought he came back because when we left ACW, Thorne was there, like, at the show. I don't know if he was there. I don't know if he wrestled, but he was specifically there because Mack was having a conversation with him while I was about to hit Dave. That's what I specific. But You say you don't think so? Oh, he was there, dude. He was at the show. I'm telling you. No, he might not have been booked. That's what I'm saying. He was definitely there.
Took over because he bounced with this guy.
Yeah.
And they did their own thing.
Yeah. So you guys, it's you leave. You're gone for a couple of months, and you come up with the idea. You guys shoot like a vignette beforehand, before you guys come out during the main event of a Scott Levesque Monster Mack championship match. They're having their championship match. You guys are outside, and you come in, and you cut a promo on Dave and all that. How did this come about? What?
I was hanging out with my buddy Mike, our age, and we were. I'm still pissed about it.
Oh yeah, and rightfully so. You were angry.
At least in my opinion. Obviously, different people kind of have different sides of views on it.
Well, if I spent $5,000 in a ring and somebody left it outside in the rain, I'd be pretty mad.
yeah, right.
So Will left. He was booked at the time. He left because he was pissed.
He took my side, basically. Yeah.
He took your side. Were you pissed that I didn't take your side and I took over the book? I was champion, dude. I couldn't go anywhere.
No, I don't remember having any quarrels with you at all because obviously it had nothing to do with you.
You came out during my match.
Came out during his match, Bloodstone.
You know what? And
So Scott Levesque wasn't being targeted during that match?
no, I very specifically remember before I went on my rant, I looked at you directly and I said, "I'm sorry, I'm doing this to you."
I recall that.
Yep. It has nothing to do with you guys. But basically how that whole thing got coiled up is that me and Mike, we were partying, we were having our Jaeger bombs and everything like that, and he was just like, "Dude, man, isn't there a show tonight?" And I was like, "Yeah, there's a show and whatever." And I'm still pissed off about it. I was like, "Let's just go." And let's.
My question is, when was the NWO-esque vignette filmed?
It was filmed during. No. It was filmed during the show because again, we went there at the start of the show. We legitimately bought our tickets. It was.
I recall you saying that in the promo.
We had Mike's girlfriend at the time, Beth, go in and buy 3 tickets. She was the only one though. She bought 3 tickets for us, so we legitimately paid. So it wasn't completely shoot, but obviously the whole gimmick was shoot. So we go there early, we get paid or whatever, and we're still drinking. So I have my camcorder, and we just go on that NWO-esque promo.
Yeah.
Yes, it was very Markish, because I didn't give a shit at the time. I wasn't wrestling anywhere else. I was at a very, very low and depressing point in my personal life, never mind my career in wrestling. So I was just like, fuck it. I don't give a damn right now. You know what I'm saying? And then we had her cue in us when the main event was happening because we knew it was a built-up show, and we were like, you know what? If he's gonna be an asshole to me, I'm gonna ruin his main event.
Did you know your boy was booked?
I didn't know until that night, and that's when I knew specifically oh man, this is so shitty for Levesque and so shitty for Monster Mack because you guys were my friends. Outside of the ring, and you had nothing to do with everything that I had to do with Dave Oliveira.
Save that shit, brother.
It was and still to this day it's like I have mixed feelings about it because I feel like I was right, but I know it was wrong.
Well, personally, from Monster Mack, you are forgiven. All right, so don't worry about that. There's no need to dwell on it. But I was.
Oh, I know.
shit.
He was all kinds of pissed
But
and breaking down the stage and everything.
I was also mad because our match was supposed to be going on a lot earlier, and time was just going on.
Oh, because I'm
And
sure
I believe
everyone
there
over
was
their
some kind
times.
of crazy hardcore match that went way too long. And by the time the match was coming, I was like, I don't even want to I don't want to do this. And then when the match actually came about, yeah, after our match actually happened, and then you guys did the surprise run-in promo. And I was rip shit. I started tearing down the stage. I actually tore down one of the poles, and one of the poles smashed me in the head. And I had this cool Harry Potter scar for a long time.
God.
But I didn't even want nothing to do with it. I went into the back room. Scott Levesque had to plead for me to come out and wrestle him. So I finally came back, and we wrestled. And I believe, was that when I won the heavyweight championship or successfully defended it? But I have a funny backstory.
So do I.
To
I'll
the
let you go
whole
first.
thing. It's hilarious, and it's too bad we didn't follow up on it because it would have been great. But I don't know. I was feeling very bitter at the point, and I had a friend that Trainee Number 1 knew who kind of really looked like you. He had the whole long hair, goatee kind of thing.
Oh, right.
So we were gonna.
Robert Chastity. It was Robert Chastity. Shout out Robert Chastity, Durfee High School. What?
So after the whole thing went down, we seen your promo on the internet of the whole NWO event. Yeah,
MySpace.
Exactly. We seen that, so we wanted to make a response video where we were gonna I forgot where it was gonna be. One of the mills. We had a spot in the mill.
We were going to invade the Karoba, or whatever the deal was, like the RDW training facility, and we were gonna shoot like I don't know if there's like a Dan Cook joke about like getting in the van. There's
man.
But it was something to do with like the Dan Cook joke and getting in the van, and we were gonna film it like we were at a mill, and we were gonna have him walk around almost like he was Bloodstone, and we
were gonna peek through the cracks of the office, and then we're gonna have the Bloodstone lookalike sitting inside as if like that's where we were. We were trying to invade the whole company, and you were supposed to find out, and we were gonna run and get in the van, because I owned a van at the time. And it would have been great, but unfortunately that never really came through.
Man.
But you probably would have got a big kick out of it yourself.
Oh, my
like, wait
God.
a minute, that's not me.
Yeah, that's oh god, man, that's so funny. Now to give you like a side story of what happened after the fact.
Yeah.
I legitimately locked my keys in my car. So here I am.
Serves you right, bitch.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, that's karma biting me in the ass right there.
Right away.
Right away. You know, because here I am. I'm shooting on this company's main event or whatever, and I'm trying to get away before anything, because I'm obviously not going to outfight 25 guys that are pissed off that I just ruined their show or
I don't
whatever.
think 25 dudes would have fought you.
No, but I was still confronted by Brian Sire, and that was the legitimate moment where I thought okay, I'm
terrified. You were terrified by Brian Sire.
and I had personal heat with him at the time, so I really thought all right, this is my chance to really fucking knock him out. But I didn't. I held it in. With the heat with Brian Sire? No. There was legitimate personal heat between the two of us.
If you would have knocked
he
out,
was sending explicit pictures to
I can
my
see
girl.
where this is heading.
Yes.
Of his feet? Oh, of her.
No.
Feet.
It was about his tiny friend there.
Oh, hey now. I heard it was like a pencil.
No, there was no belt. There was no belt.
Again, another funny side story. One day I found, I don't remember what I was Googling. I think I was Googling like Alliance Championship Wrestling. And I found like ACW franchise under like a foot fetish website.
Oh my god.
And his profile picture was him completely naked, wearing the WWF, not the Winged Eagle one, the one after that, the blue one or whatever. Wearing that belt, and the strap was covering his crotch. So I saved the photo clear, obviously saved it to my computer. And for personal reasons, the personal reasons were we printed a bunch of naked LeMay 8x10s, autographed them individually to our friends, and then delivered them as ribs secretly, like sliding them underneath our friends' doors and dipping out.
We would slip them in people's bags.
So awesome.
We would do all kinds of crazy.
Oh my god.
We went to our friend's Pat's house and just slipped it right under his door and left.
That's the best rib ever, dude.
We signed it
my
and said
God.
I love you, Brandon LeMay. All kinds of. Oh man, great rib. But anyways, back to our story. If you would have knocked out LeMay that night, I think I would have forgave you right there. I would have shook your hand and be like, "Hey, not too bad."
All right.
So the key, you get locked out. Your keys are locked in your car. What do? Do you just hang out and just wait? Like what? Do you?
I mean, I was hanging.
Yeah, so,
I had. Yeah. I mean, he was obviously like the backup in case something went down.
Standing bodyguard.
But no. Ultimately, I broke down, and I called my parents who had a backup key, and they they came down and unlocked the car.
Just to elaborate on the rage. Here you are. I'm booking the show. Main event comes. Me versus Monster Mack for the ACW heavyweight title. You're cutting your promo. Out comes Rage right in front of you, arms crossed. I'm like, oh shit. This motherfucker.
Well, because obviously I knew it was going to be a hostile situation because you just don't do that,
Right.
and I knew better. I legitimately did, but I was just so mad, and like I said, I was at a depressed point in my life personally that I was just like, fuck it. Like, who cares? I might get arrested tonight. I got bail money. Like, I set aside bail money because that's
Just
how,
in case, yeah.
That's where I thought it was going that night.
Right. So you guys do it. You're all done with ACW. What do? You're not wrestling. You're just. What is Anthony Stone doing at that time?
Before we get to what you do, what was the game plan here? Because I know you did the NWO vignette. Were you trying to start your own corporation, your own federation, or?
Well, we did have our training facility that we were running, and we had other independent promotions starting to do like their school in there and whatnot. And then the idea was to take the students there and run a show with it and see exactly how it went. Caroba Pro is what the name ended up being, which we went to the Somerset building to run that show. And I remember very specifically being like, all right, something's going to go down. So, I went to my brother Mercury, who knew 2 black belts that he worked with and like had like legitimate like resumes that they did this and that. And I was like, all right, see if you want these guys to like be hired as like security, because I almost knew, like, I had that gut feeling like after that incident, like something's gonna go down. And obviously it's always a good idea to have like legitimate security to protect the workers, to protect everyone. Obviously, I mean, nothing did happen, which I was surprised about, but I was.
So yeah, as I say, the 3 of us were there. We watched the show. Monster Mack fell in love with Johnny Cockstrong.
Johnny Cockstrong was the MVP of that
Monster
show,
Mack was
hands down, dude.
He was freaking out about that guy. It's hilarious. So I didn't even realize that was. I'm sure I realized then, but until Levesque brought it up, I didn't realize that was you guys who ran that show.
Yeah.
First of all, I just want to explain it had nothing to do with how strong his cock was, all right? That had nothing to do with my infatuation.
It had everything to do with it. You're talking about you loved all the spots he did.
You were amazed with it.
Yeah, he was. So you guys run Caroba Pro. You're running a show, right?
Yep.
How many live shows did you guys run?
Only one.
Just that one?
We only ran one. And that was due to a lot of personal grunts that I was going through at the time with Eric Medeiros, who we spoke about earlier.
Yep.
We were both running that facility, and we had a falling out. He stopped showing up. There was a point in time where he wasn't paying rent.
Right.
And I had to save the building by basically making a personal side agreement with the landlord.
Right.
That allowed me to stay there for about another year and a half before ultimately that individual sold the building to another guy. And then what happened was he wanted me to get an entertainer's license. He wanted me to get all kinds of insurance. Yeah. And it was basically his way of weeding me out, because I was like, dude, there's no way I'm gonna afford like $2,000 a month on
insurance,
a training facility. Like, and I tried explaining to him, I'm not running a show here. There's no shows. Like, we had our scrimmages, we had like little indoor like practice shows, but it was never paying attendance, because one of the biggest things that we had put on us as far as that training facility goes, we weren't allowed to advertise. We weren't allowed to like basically do anything as far as just like
fans
word of mouth.
Yeah.
Word of mouth was the only way we can get people involved in it. And the Forge is what we referred to it as, because we didn't want to like rehash the Caroba and what we learned and kind of tarnish. Not to say that we would have, but we wanted. It was legitimately like next door to where the Caroba would have been.
The next mill down.
Exactly. So we didn't want to tarnish anything that we had, so we just basically came up with the Forge, which obviously is a cliche off of the creative mode that Halo had.
Yeah.
And we thought it was kind of like a really unique concept, because like in that you create your own world, and we thought like, well, if we're going to run a training facility, that's very appropriate in my opinion, because in the Forge you mold and create this world to be exactly what you want. And that was what we wanted to do as far as a training school goes, is like take these new guys and mold them into the wrestlers they want to be in.
Yeah, how was the Forge? Who was running it? Who was running the classes?
Like I said, we had separate wrestling promotions going
in there and running classes.
We had New England Championship Wrestling going in there. It was Matt and Kyle Storm. Evan Six was running on Wednesdays. I would let Brickhouse run on Tuesdays, and then I would run a personal class on Thursdays. So we kind of had like a 3-day straight schedule going on, and the Forge was, in my opinion, only successful during its last year there, because that's when and not to say that it was thanks to Eric Medeiros, but after he left, I had full-fledged control.
Right.
I
yeah.
started cleaning up the place. I started running a schedule. I did private sessions. Through, this time where I was managing the building is where I met, one of my current promoters, Drew Cordero.
Okay.
He had.
So your connection to Drew goes back that far?
Yes, it goes back that far. That's kind of long story short, he was running his own it wasn't Beyond Wrestling then.
Right.
It was not
Beyond.
It was it was pretty Beyond. It was called BYE, and that's where I met Drew Cordero, and he invited me to check it out and watch it, and that's when I wrestled Corey Havoc, who's kind of a mainstay out in New Jersey right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Funny Drew Cordero story. Recently, while hanging out with Trevor at his house, we had his laptop hooked up to the TV. He was like, he wanted to watch some backyard wrestling. So I was like, dude, it's easy. Just type 3 random letters and then put backyard wrestling on YouTube, and you'll find something like HWF, and you'll find a bunch of random.
That's hilarious.
Shit. So we type in, I don't remember what the sequence of letters is, but I type it in, I hit enter. The first video that pops up, it's like the backyard brawl to end it all. So I hit the button, we're watching it, first person I see, Drew Cordero.
Yeah.
It came out, there was a ring in the backyard. It wasn't actually on the grass, but it came out, he cut a promo, he got bumped or whatever, and then it was like a music video of some of the craziest backyard wrestling shit I've ever seen in my life. It was insanity. I just wanted to throw that in there randomly. I just typed in 3 letters, found Drew Cordero in the first try.
That's amazing.
So, you run in the school. Where are you working?
Oh, I'm not wrestling anywhere.
Just anywhere. So you're
I'm not wrestling anywhere. At that point in time, I was so, like I mentioned before, in my personal life, I was so depressed and down and whatever that I was just working full time. I was focusing more on this school. I was between my shoot job and this training facility. That was like the only 2 things that I had going for me at that point in time.
Now, what is it that gets you back in?
That gets me back into wrestling.
To wrestling, yeah.
Through New England Championship Wrestling, running their school there. I mean, they had an interest in me being a part of a group that they had there. It was basically their version of Fight Club.
Okay.
And it was like Evan Six, Nick Steele, myself, and Vane was the group, and then I ended up being introduced with them. And they were kind of the guys that kind of not brought me back to independence, but that was my first legitimate independent wrestling show probably since Yankee Pro Wrestling. And it's not a knock to PTW or what ACW was, but there's
a difference.
There's
a difference. You can tell
exactly
just from doing the shows and being in the locker rooms and stuff from an indie wrestling show and those old ACW shows. A lot of times when people ask how long we've been wrestling or whatever, I tend to not count that time,
right?
Because to me, again, we were taking it serious at the time in our own heads, you know what I mean?
Right.
But we weren't taking it serious, serious.
When did you count ACW?
At the time, while I was there, I counted ACW. I was like, I've been wrestling for.
I counted when Jamie took over.
That's the ACW that you count.
That last show with Raven, that's when I started counting how I wrestled. So I did that one match for ACW, and pretty much in reality, I've been wrestling for 10 years, but we only claim 3.
Yeah. So they get you back in. You're working NECW. How now? Who were you working with there? Because I'm sure from ACW where you're working.
I want to shoot.
Oh, Scott Levesque's got something to shoot about.
What's your name? ACW.
NECW. What's the name?
Oh man, I love this one. They legitimately used my shoot name.
You just Nick him.
I was just
I don't want
yep.
to throw it out. But
They
yeah.
legit.
Variations of that?
No Nick Larama.
No variations. There was a point in time where they used me for the NECW TV title tournament that they were running, and they did include the Bloodstone tag in the middle of that. But then immediately in the next round, they started referring to me as Little Nicky.
What? Little Nicky.
Little
yeah.
Nicky. Little Nicky. Yeah. So it's Little Nicky Emerald, and obviously. I'm pretty sure to this day it was. You know, not really much you could say as far as like the powers that can be. You know, they're the ones with the book and they're the ones doing it, and you just, you know, like, hey, you know, like you take it or leave it. So
Yeah.
especially where I wasn't doing zero wrestling at the time, I was like, hey, whatever.
Call me Little Nicky, I guess. Do
I
it up.
guess exactly.
Now, you're working NECW. Who are you working with, like, against?
The Crown Jewels, like they were the big like hot tag team, like really at the time there. So I was mainly working with them, because aside from that angle that they were working with, and the TV title tournament they had, I really didn't go really further than that, because ultimately what happened was when I lost the training facility,
Yep.
I stopped getting booked for NECW. So
you think there was some sort of, obviously, a connection there?
Oh yeah,
you were
because
helping them out. They were trying to-
obviously from their point of view, they were pissed off because, like I said, they were running their school there and they were starting to, you know, generate an income off of students that they were coming in, and you know, in their point of views, which obviously there's no, you know, masking the truth. Like the building's lost, they're not running the school anymore, they're not making business anymore.
Right.
But obviously, they held a small grudge against me because, you know, they thought I was the reason for it, which, I mean, ultimately, what happened. I had no control over it. Yeah,
Right.
I lost the building, and it happened, but basically after that, they stopped using me.
Now, and, okay, Levesque, do it up, my friend. You got a question? No, go ahead. Oh, go, hit it up. Go to the bathroom, dude. We'll just keep talking. No big deal. What were you going to say, Levesque?
I was going to bring up RDW reunion shows, which happened at the Forge facility.
Okay. Talk a little about that. Is that some of you in there? Are you doing some, were you
Yeah,
part
I
of
worked
the
those
reunion?
shows.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're part of
of
the
course.
reunion shows? Well, you say, of course, you didn't work the reunion show this weekend, did you?
Well, I had to work.
Yeah.
You know?
Coming up with those excuses, Scott Levesque. I'm enjoying the podcast. What are you thinking over there, Levesque? Do you have a bunch of RDW questions still in your head that you want to ask?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, throw them up at the end. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to, make sure we get through the whole story.
If it was up to me, this whole podcast would be up.
Just be RDW.
RDW, you know? But,
We've already had like a good hour. There's a little bit over an hour of some RDW talk, a little some backyard wrestling stuff. We're getting into the indie section now, I'd say, of the podcast. Mack, what are you thinking, dude?
What's that? I got a bunch of questions about baby leashes, so you don't want to talk to me.
What?
Baby leashes. What's your take, Scott Levesque?
Like he's a crazed man.
What are you talking about?
A baby leash, like
A baby
it's like a backpack that has like a tail on it. Where you hold the tail so your kid can't like run away. Yeah, Mack's all about the baby leashes. I'm totally against baby leashes. And for some reason, anytime we talk about doing a podcast with somebody, that's the question. He wants to bring up the baby leashes to find out if he's the only
When
one.
did this guy discover the baby leash?
You're covering the mic. Nobody can
I
hear
know.
you. No,
That's
you,
on purpose.
no, we're having a conversation. You talk right into that microphone, Scott Levesque. When did he discover he liked baby leashes? When he was doing it with a chick with a kid. That's who used the baby leashes. That's what.
It's not bad to leash your baby. I'm just saying. They wander around a little too far around the corner. Depending on how long the leash is depending
have
on
a
how
leash.
far they
Like
can
it.
go. Exactly. You know what I mean? I wanted the female perspective when we did a female podcast of the baby leash, but now that Bloodstone is back, we are going to go right back into it, and never mind about the baby leashes. We'll get back to that in another podcast.
This guy, you're going for like 2 minutes, and he's bringing up baby leashes.
Baby leashes?
Yeah.
That's what
You're going to bring it up. I got to ask you, Anthony Stone, what's your take on baby leashes? Would you leash your baby?
Absolutely not. I never did for
I'm on
either.
your side too, dude.
No, for either of my two sons and my expecting daughter that I'm expecting in March.
Oh man, I didn't know. Congratulations.
Oh,
dude.
thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah, my first baby girl.
A daughter finally, right? A
Yeah,
girl.
well, I don't want to say finally because I'm still, I'm a little
nervous.
I'm proud of the fact that I'm finally having a girl, but yeah, exactly. Obviously, I mean, I've been, well, yeah, I'm getting ready for that. Let me tell you.
Yeah. So Levesque,
But baby leashes,
yeah,
yeah, that's a no go. I don't agree with that at all.
Mack, get out of here with your baby leash shit. Levesque, while you were gone, he brought up. So we're talking about RDW reunion shows at the Forge.
Oh, all right. Yeah. Yeah,
Before the Forge closes, you guys have how many reunion shows?
we officially had 3.
3.
We officially had 3. And basically we were kind of like working a little mini schedule there. Well, he was also living in Tennessee. We're talking about Terrence Thomas right now. The most talented guy that, overall, well, as far as overall ability goes, he had charisma, he had the talent. Like, he's always like, at this point in time, he's the number 1 guy. Like, I was, but you know what?
Scott Levesque's asking why he's not
He
working
was,
Yankee.
yeah, he was older. And he had a different lifestyle choice. You know what I'm saying? Like he had a few independent dates, but aside from that, like it never really branched out as far as that goes. So yeah, to touch upon the reunion shows we had, the first one was kind of like a shoot on me.
Yeah.
And how it came about, really. I was having a random discussion, and it just kind of came about. And it was just like, hey, I was talking with William Thorne, as a matter of fact, and the idea was just kind of like, hey, like, there was a lot of matches that never really happened, and those are the golden era, like in our opinion, because like there was just no bullshit and friends having a great time and wrestling and having great matches, especially during this era that we're watching right now. Like, this is without a doubt like our golden age right here. Like, so he was basically like, hey, yeah, I think we can do it. I was like, really? Like, and it happened in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But what I didn't know at the time was they originally wanted to do it for my birthday as a shoot
Like
birthday.
a surprise kind of thing?
Yeah. So the idea had already been boiling in the background without my knowledge of it happening. So when I actually brought it up, it was kind of like easy to be like, all right, well, now it's for sure we can do this now.
Right.
Oh, man, God.
Legit, was it just strictly RDW guys that they brought back?
At the very first show, yes. It was strictly RDW guys.
And now, how awesome must have that been? I'm sure there was a bunch of guys that you haven't seen in a little while, just to meet all back up and hang out and get to work with each other. That must have been pretty great.
Oh man, it was the best, dude. Like, it was one of those situations where, once they found out, once the word became official, they started telling other friends who knew what RDW was, and then they came. So it wasn't just like the old wrestlers; it was like our old
fans
base, that wanted to come and watch us wrestle again, dude. Like, oh my God, it was one of those magical moments in life where you don't like write things down like that. They just happen through chance and just. The way that fate works and connections and our personal energies. And I'm not sure if you're a believer in that, but I am. So it was one of those situations for me where I was like, this was perfect. Like,
I believe a lot more in that, Anthony, than I do in a lot of other theories of life. I think at that time, correct me if I'm wrong, Scott Levesque was doing an angle of I'm better than RDW. Wasn't that the deal? No, at the RDW reunion shows, weren't you a heel? Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
No, well, I mean, especially when you left as a heel. I mean, it was one of those things where RDW.
Now, who booked those 3 reunion shows?
It was a combination of myself, William Thorne, and Mark Quinn.
Okay.
And like touching upon Scott Levesque's little gimmick that he had going on there. The whole booking on the show in general wanted to touch back on what RDW was basically based off of, was that pure raw emotion.
Right.
That really we thought was the key to connect an audience and connect ourselves and keep ourselves intrigued and interested in other people's storylines.
Right.
Because as you know, sometimes wrestling other shows, like you can really give a crap what you're doing. I mean, you don't really give a crap what they're doing.
Yeah,
you just really worry about what you're doing, and that's it. Well, RDW, we wanted to have everyone interested in what everyone was doing. So, like, we would have, like, little mini-work shoots and just really get personal. And obviously, sometimes it didn't really...
Things went a little too far.
A little too far,
right.
Obviously. But so with Levesque, it was one of those things where I was like, man, like, how awesome would it be if you're this RDW guy who continued wrestling after RDW died, and you're kind of like spiteful of this whole event even happening.
Right.
And I'm not sure if that's exactly how it was pitched to him, but knowing Tony, he maybe had a hand in it.
Right.
As far as that goes. But it just worked out, and it's not like a shoot or anything.
Talking about you, son. saying that you had a hand in the that idea for the angle.
A possibility in the hand as far as the whole idea of you being like anti-RDW because you had moved on from where we were, and it was almost like why should I even be here? I'm in better places now.
From the worst guy in RDW talent-wise history.
Oh God,
This guy, Scott Levesque,
Buckley.
coming back to RDW and being one of the guys that actually went further than RDW,
Right.
to come back as a heel. Why wouldn't I use that? You know what I'm saying?
It made perfect sense. You had an awesome match with Rage, by the way.
It's pretty good, man. I love Rage, and I think the booking was have me go over or whatever. I was like, no way, because I love Rage. He's so good. I've always looked up to Rage, and I was like, no way. Good old crucifix pin. Have Rage go over. Boom.
Yeah, and that's very true. Because obviously with the idea of potential reunion shows, we were going to keep that whole angle going, and Levesque being Levesque, because just being the bigger man, and should be like, I don't really need this. Here's Rage. No one really knew how talented he was unless he was in there with specific guys. I mean, he was a talent that could elevate your game, but it was very rare when you would see his game elevated by another individual, and Levesque certainly did it that evening.
Now, what stopped the reunion shows? Was it the losing the building?
The loss of the building.
Yeah.
And ultimately, through the grapevines from, other people and associates and whatnot is where I found out that was the whole backstory of why I had heat with NECW and Matt and Kyle Storm, because they blamed my, quote, backyard shows for losing the building. When in fact it was I lost the building because the dude who owned it sold it, and the new guy wanted me to have all this other insurance thing. Now, there was an MMA boxing school downstairs that also went kapush.
Yeah, they left too.
They were a little bit more established than I was. TNT Kickboxing. They were, a legitimate gym, and then they moved down to the same mills on the first floor. We were on the second floor.
TNT, isn't that
Was that ran by Tim Gillette?
I don't know exactly who it was ran by.
I think I've heard of the place TNT. We used their boxing ring before and put on our own event. It was kind of like a EAW versus PTW at the time. Way back in the day, we were doing a versus Fed kind of thing.
It's interesting.
TNT was the arena that had it on their mat and everything, so it could similarly possibly be the same guy.
And he did a lot of the MMA and the boxing training and all that stuff. And it was a new beige, so
Small world, huh?
yeah, it's funny. So the reunion, the building's closed. You did a little bit for NECW. After that finishes, where do you find yourself? Are you working anywhere around that time? Is that when Dave turns ACW over to Candido?
Yes.
And do you start working for ACW again under the guise of the leadership of Sean Candido?
At that point in time, I saw a lot of my old Yankee Pro guys starting to wrestle there, and some of my friends that William Thorne was working there again. Obviously Levesque was still there. So I saw this as maybe an opportunity for me to get back into wrestling, and more importantly, get back. Because from what ACW was, on an outside perspective, because again, there's obviously a different, opinion on who you talk to as far as that goes. Yeah. But from my perspective, I thought, okay, now ACW is starting to really be serious about what they're doing and trying to do, evolve. That's a perfect word to use. So obviously with their heat, being heat with Dave Oliveira, I had my crutch, William Thorne. I was kind of the middleman as far as trying to work and patch those things out,
right.
Because clearly you don't want to work for a promoter that's still obviously you're not going to work for the guy who still has heat with you.
Yeah.
So really Thorne being the crutch kind of talked to me, talked to him, and we kind of had a mutual understanding of the whole situation where we both agreed to an extent, because we're both Portuguese, so we're going to be stubborn about it at least a little bit. But we both agreed to an extent that we were both right in our own way, wrong in our own way. Right. But at the same point, we were just hey man, let's just forget about it, and I really want to work here, and I apologize for what I did because I knew it was wrong, even though I felt at that point I felt justified. Exactly, I knew morally it was wrong.
Right.
Obviously to you guys that were involved in the main event and to the boys that were working the show, it was just something that I would never, ever, ever, touch upon and say, hey, that's a good idea.
Right. So you come back, you're working for ACW. Is it DUI right away, or are you just doing Bloodstone by yourself?
I'm just doing Bloodstone by myself. And DUI kind of happened because there was another point in time where I had to break from ACW, and that was again, a personal life choice. I was not only starting a new job where I was full time and I was working this very insane second shift job where I was like almost never available, and it was a union thing, so attendance was important, and you couldn't just call out because you'd lose your job. And I was also expecting my second son at the time.
Right.
Was that when you were working?
Not quite yet. Not quite yet.
This is all of the Fairhaven VFW at this point?
Yes,
Okay.
this is all the Fairhaven the Fairhaven VFW, correct.
So you have to take a step away. How does DUI come about?
DUI comes about because I was associated with William Thorne still, because obviously we're friends outside of rings.
Right. Natural kind of thing.
Yeah. So we were doing tag matches here and there, but once I left, I kind of pitched the idea. I was like, well, Kellen Thomas, he really isn't really doing anything. Maybe you can kind of ask him if he wants to wrestle, whatever.
And you knew him because of the connections through the EOS guys and all that stuff, right?
And he was also training with us back at the Forge on a consistent basis.
Okay.
Because he was still working at NECW.
Kellen's another podcast. I'd like to have do a Kellen one. I think.
Oh man, that would be a legitimate riot to see what comes out of, because he's got some, no pun intended, man, but he's got some really, yeah. That would be a good one to listen to.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. I'm going to have to hit him up and talk to him about it. Kellen, if you're listening, hit me up, too. We're going to do a podcast. It's going to happen, dude. Levex Log Cabin.
It should happen. Absolutely.
I'm down with it. So you leave again. So Kellen and Thorne come together. They create DUI. You come back.
Yep. Eventually, I got into a position at the job that I had at the time where I would be. I worked third shift.
Yeah.
But I would, be more available to work these, the shows
in the late evening before you go into work or whatever.
Yes. So when the three of us came together, well, the four of us, including, Kelly Brooks.
Yep.
That's when we formed the faction DUI, Destruction Under Impact.
And initially, you guys were heels, and then you turned babyface, or was it always a babyface deal?
Well, when I came back after my leave of absence, I'll call it, we were pretty much faces, because I was a heel. I had just gotten over with the Cruiserweight title, and I finished my program with Matt Magnum, which I look at to this day, and for as green as he was then, it was pretty impressive how it came out in video.
Right.
Because some of those matches I share on my personal YouTube page as something that I'm proud of sharing. Because I don't like to be that guy that shares every single match that he has online. One, I would like you to see, me live in person, and me to, have a personal touch as far as, me entertaining you and you watching me wrestle. So that's one reason why I don't post every single match of mine, So the few matches that I have up there publicly, because I have, 100 more videos of our personal RDW footage that I share with, online with those groups of guys. That was one of those matches, that whole series, I was like, for someone that was as green as he was, I really liked the way it worked out. And as you know, Levesque, and as you guys know, sometimes you just find that chemistry with a guy.
Just click.
That it just clicks, and it just works. And, you guys have, these really, really smooth flowing matches where you could tell a really good story without putting very minimal effort into it. And he was one of those athletic guys that was young and hungry, wanted to get noticed, and I just want to have good matches no matter who I'm working.
Right.
Training, obviously, with that match we worked.
I
took a goddamn fucking bump from the ceiling to try to put you over, and it did. Obviously I put you over. So yeah, go, touching back on that, that's one of those matches where I certainly am proud of.
Yeah. Now, I didn't realize this while we recorded it, and I didn't until I went back and listened to it. But on the Sean Candido podcast, he calls you a shitbag.
Whoa.
And,
Yeah.
I think that's when we first started talking about putting together this podcast with you on it, so you could kind of tell your side of the scenario. And
Your story.
I want to know what happened.
Before you say anything, we like to get all sides out. Monster Mack and Training One are men of peace. We have no problems with anyone. We try to be
Yeah, you
as
guys give me a little
biased as
disclaimer
possible.
at the intro of the show where, like, the opinions based on this person are solely of those. Right,
So
right.
pretty much, I just want to get that disclaimer out there. Candido, do not hate us. We love you, and we appreciate all the work that you're giving us. But we have to hear Bloodstone's side of the story. Since you talked your jive, he's about to talk his.
I say screw that. I'm wearing a Team Stone T-shirt. Hashtag Team Stone.
Oh, man. All right. Obviously, this was a subject that I kind of expected, but I originally agreed on.
Right. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to just.
No. It's kind of funny actually because and we'll probably get into this probably at the closing moments of the interview, but we've actually spoken recently about possibly working on a working relationship again.
Okay.
So we'll touch base on that.
So you don't want to go too much into the trash talking, is what you're saying.
So possibly we're gonna mend some relationships on here.
Well, yeah, but
I would love to see Anthony Stone.
Anthony Stone and fucking Whalen City.
Scott Lefebvre wants Anthony Stone in Whaling City Wrestling. He used the F word, but I'm not going to use that one. But that just shows his passion for Anthony Stone.
All right, so to touch upon, Candido, he had literally started, Whaling City Championship Wrestling and had a private meeting with myself and Kevin Castro, and we made a business agreement to have my ring being used as the rental because obviously he needed a ring, to use or whatever. So we established that, and there were no issues whatsoever as far as that goes. The only issue that I had, and I'm not sure if a lot of the boys know this, but do you remember when they were doing split rosters? And
The
I
Fall
think that's
River
when you
Fairhaven
guys
show.
kind of
Yeah,
like
that's when
got
we made
brought
our-
back into that, like as far as being on the Fall
mix,
River
yeah,
roster.
yeah.
Okay. The only reason why those Fall River shows happened was because I agreed to take a pay cut
On the ring rental
on the
stuff?
ring rental because he had made a complaint about paying for the transportation for it, and simply put, me taking a pay cut was so that the boys can have
run
a show.
the show, yeah.
And I'm not trying to like have any claim to that, but that's a legitimate
That's what
fact.
happened, yeah.
We had a set price on what I thought was fair and what he thought was fair, but when it came to those Fall River shows, I brought in a little bit less, and like I said, it was for the sake of the guys having a show.
Right.
We know now that venue isn't necessarily the best place to run wrestling shows, but again,
Mainly because of its location, the terrible parking, the the neighborhood, all those
right,
things.
the fact,
Because you can get stabbed right outside the building. I think that's the reasoning.
yeah. So that's something that I'd like to put out there as far as like me showing like a sign that like I'm not a quote shitbag that he referred me as at
Right,
that
right,
time.
yeah.
Where the real big disagreement came into play was when he, acquired a different ring. He obviously no longer needed mine.
Right.
And what happened was I had agreed.
It was like a storage situation, right?
There was
You
a-
were storing the ring outside in
It-
like a big trailer deal.
In
right,
the
or
same
whatever.
racked pack that's outside the VFW in Fairhaven.
Yeah, yeah.
I had pretty much said, hey, well, look, I really don't want to move the ring. If I have
Every
to,
show, right?
if I
yeah.
have to, I will. But how about I agree to pay half of what you're paying?
Okay.
Because it only makes sense. Like, you pay half and I'll pay half. And he agreed to that. And at that point in time, he wasn't using me on the shows. So I was going there regardless and dropping off my payment. Well, the third show that I went to, I couldn't get a hold of him. I don't know what happened. He just wasn't available. I couldn't find him.
Whatever the deal.
Whatever
yeah.
happened. So I decided to call the company which he was renting out of in,
Right, yep.
in New Bedford. And I was like, hello, I'm making a payment in regards to, his shoot name and blah, 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 blah. And they're like, all right. And I'm talking to the person on the phone, and they say, well, how much do you want to put down? And I'm I'm like, well, I have X amount that I'm gonna pay or whatever.
Right.
And the person almost like sounds shocked. He was like, well, that's not gonna cover the balance that's on this account. And I was like, what do you mean? And it's like, well, there's a $580 due balance on this.
Jesus. Yeah.
Now I'm sitting here like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Obviously there's something I don't know going on.
Right, because you've been paying your.
So I've been
part of
paying
the
my
bill,
half, and
yeah,
here I'm
every
finding
month.
out there's an substantial amount due on this trailer thing. So now I'm trying to cover my own ass because I know the liabilities and the legal issues that people can take as far as that goes. They can take your shit and throw it right out.
Right,
Because
yeah,
that's
just
not
leave
your
it.
property. So I played it off like, hey, look, I just had some property that's recently put in there. I had no idea. I wanted to help the guy out, and I'm trying to play it cool.
Right.
I immediately contact Candido.
Candido, yeah.
And I'm like, hey, what's the situation that's going on here? I try to make a payment and this and that, and he completely flipped this lid. You had no reason going to my personal account. You had none of this. You should have talked to me about it. I was like, well, listen, I still do ring rentals on the side from here and there. I don't want to go to this trailer now and find out that it's locked up. Like, that's going to fuck me over as much as you now.
Like they put like an extra lock on the thing.
Yeah,
taking your shit
so,
out, yeah.
I pretty much was like, all right, look, I'm gonna get it out of there. And he's like, well, you're not going to get it out until you pay me. And I said, no, like,
Yeah.
I want no business of what's going on right now. I'm just going to get it out of there. And he's like, no, you're not going to take it. And I was like, the bottom line was, look, if I have to go through the proper authorities to get it out,
get my ring.
you're not going to tell me you're going to hold my $5,000 ring, which is a federal offense now,
Yeah.
against my will, that you're going to hold it up against me. So, ultimately, I got my
Get
ring.
your ring out,
I went through the methods that I had to go through or whatever. But where the real heat comes in after all this happens and we have this big blowout about me invading his personal space and his privacy or whatever, which I don't know if this is me saying I'm blowing up a spot, but at that point I was like, no, like this is like my side of view, like we're talking about. The next show that happens,
Yep.
my phone blows up like nonstop. My cousin's calling me, he's calling me, all kinds of wrestlers are calling me. And I'm like, why the fuck? Like,
Why is everyone
calling me right now? So eventually, I reached to my cousin Frank, who was just going, and he's like, "Hey, Jamie says you took his Cumberlands, and you took this, and you took that," and I'm like, "Look, obviously you have nothing to do with this situation,
Right?
But
yeah.
I have witnesses who were there. I took the property that was mine, and I left. Now,
Don't correct me if I'm wrong. Your FlexiBoard ring doesn't even have
it doesn't.
Cumberland.
It doesn't.
Right?
It doesn't have it doesn't have that installed in it. And you can ask wrestlers to this present day, who's been in my ring in several ring rentals that I've had.
Yeah.
I still don't have any come-alongs.
Right. Yeah. It's just, I don't.
So
remember them ever
it's
being
something
there.
like if I were to steal his come-alongs, don't you think I'd use them?
Right. Instead of just sitting
Not
on them.
only that, but there was so much heat in that situation where I had to go out of my way to get into the property without his consent.
Right.
If I was that pissed off, and if I was that kind of guy, don't you think I would have taken the whole fucking ring and went to a metal yard and sold it on him?
Yeah, instead of just what was yours.
Right. It's like I didn't want anything out of it more than what was mine, and just be like, all right, we obviously have a disagreement. I'm gonna take what's mine over that.
Right.
But obviously that whole scale escalated, and he looked at it like I'm a shitbag.
Right.
Because I cost him money apparently, and he still feels about that to this day, that I cost him money over the Cumberlands and
So to this day, he still feels like you were part of the reason why they. Not saying that you took them, but that they were misplaced or disappeared or whatever.
yeah,
the deal.
and I honestly don't know what happened to them.
Right.
Who's to say someone like Brandon LeMay, who also had heat with them? I'm not saying this is what happened, but I'm just saying anything could have been used to manipulate to put me in the picture instead of that person.
Right.
I have no idea, but I was being pointed. I was like, you're the reason why this is missing, and I have to pay $100 to get new Cumberlands and all this bullshit. And I'm like, dude, like I obviously didn't take it. My ring doesn't use it, dude.
Right.
If I was that spiteful against you, I would have taken the whole goddamn thing
instead of just
But I didn't, and we kind of like I said, we kind of talked about it a little bit recently, and that stems from a DUI reunion that happened at a Railing City show where I had personally messaged Candido and said, hey, listen, I know this heat. As far as I'm concerned, this is like a year's past now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, as far as I'm concerned, I don't, go to bed with like any quarrels or
ill will towards you.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm gonna ask a favor of you, and I hope you can appreciate this favor because of all the work that I've done for you and X, Y, and Z things. You know, we're having a DUI reunion, and I'd like to be a part of it.
Yeah.
I'm not asking for a roster spot. I just want to be there, ringside,
Right.
to have like that moment be more, special. And if you give me an answer one way or the other, I'd appreciate it. And he flat out, like within 30 seconds of that message being sent on Facebook, he said no.
Yeah.
And I left it as that. I was like, all right. I left
It is
my answer,
yeah.
and it is what it is. But as far as a potential working relationship, as current day goes, like it's been talked about because he brought up that situation.
Yeah.
Where he's like, well, hey, you reached out to me, but in order for this to be completely hashed out, we should talk about what happened. And we talked about it, and from his point of view, he's simply asking, he was asking me to repay the damages that he went through.
Like, yeah.
And I kind of took that, as like, you know what? I did break his locks.
Right, yeah.
So to as far as that concerns, he has, okay, he had to go out and spend money on that.
Right, yeah.
But like I said, and I'll still say this to the day with a straight face, like I went in there, I grabbed my ring
Took
and
over
my
shows,
property and left because I didn't want to be bothered with anything else as far as like the personal gripes were concerned.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit online, and that got touched up upon as like, well, if you want to work with me again, you should pay back the money that you owe me. And we kind of talked about it a little bit, and I gave my own 2 cents. Like he hasn't even heard my side of the view that I'm telling right now.
He'll hear it when he listens
I'm
to
sure,
the
I'm
podcast.
sure, and I'm sure he'll listen to it because I'm sure he'll like, oh, what's he got to say about me? It's just like I listen to his podcast.
Yeah.
What's he got to say about me? Oh. I'm a shitbag. Okay, well, obviously you're not everyone's best friend, and I learned that years and years ago as an adult. But it's one of those things, man. So, as far as a potential return to WCW, I'm not gonna lie. WCW, well, ACW and WCW, well, not really so much WCW, but at least ACW when it was in my opinion, its prime. When you had like the Hood's really hot, and Matt Taven and us, and everyone else, and Chris Pyro and Davey Cash and all those guys, Monroe and Breakhouse Baker was still kicking it, man, and David Baker started coming to his own, and we were really like doing something special at that VFW. We were like selling it out on a consistent basis.
Right.
So to look at it now, to look at it then, it's a very different state of mind, and I'm sure everyone can agree with me on that. And it's one of those things where I feel if I do go back, it would be purely just to say thank you to
Have
that
some
crowd.
fun. Yeah.
Purely just to say thank you for that crowd, because when I had my first title win in God knows how long it was at that point, when I went over on Vane, which that was a very, very special moment for me personally. I had a lot of friends there that were there, and it was a special moment where at that point in time, I'm not sure if he'll agree with me or not because there's still a controversy on that whole situation.
Yeah.
But the end of what's in the books is that I walked out as the champion, and I still thanked him. I said thank you for this opportunity, and I'm gonna show you that I can be the champion that the best champion I can be.
Now, after all this, I think this brings us almost to about present day time, and we brought up Drew Cordero a little bit. I want to talk to you a little bit about Beyond.
All right, yeah.
How did you get involved now in the Beyond promotion?
Well, as we talked about a little bit when I had the Forge, he had rented out the building to do his own little wrestling thing or whatever. And through that, we kept connections because I was always interested in what he was doing.
Right.
And he started releasing little matches from up a taping that he had out in Elyria, Ohio. That's where he moved out to. And I always watched it, just because
this was in the warehouse, right? A warehouse or something. The ring was.
It was technically a garage.
Okay.
They were renting out a garage to another company out there, Mega Wrestling.
Okay.
They were running their little school down there, which apparently like Chris Hero had a big like
Hand
influence
in it,
out
yeah.
there. So it obviously grew attention.
Yeah.
So the fact that like wrestling was happening out there was like drawing in that attention for that specifically, reason. So to get back on, Beyond, I always, I follow the product because I try to be a student of the game.
Right.
And I try to watch a little bit of everything, and I want to see like what's over with the reactions and all that fun stuff. And ultimately, we were talking on MySpace,
Okay.
and he was like, man, you're always welcome to come down. And I'm like, yeah, but you're all the way in Ohio.
Right. Yeah. It's a long trip.
Now, at that point in time, not only was I just like taking minor bookings, I had, this was
random spot shows. and
random
stuff,
spot
yeah.
shows, but nothing really fantastic. Nothing really stood out. But I had the mentality at that point in time where I told myself, I recently traveled to the Wrestle Factory in Pennsylvania to train with Mike Quackenbush.
Yeah.
Because I was at a point in my career where I felt very stale, and I felt like the New England area was very like, again, I hate using the word, but political.
Right.
In the sense where, in order for you to get somewhere, you had to be buddy-buddy with someone, or you had to kiss ass with someone, which, my options were very limited at that point in time.
Yeah.
Not that I say I like to play the politic game, but obviously in some occasions it's worked out in my favor.
Right.
So now the touch, with Mike Quackenbush, I was at a point in my career where I really wanted to like challenge myself professionally and thought like maybe I can get outside New England now. Like I've kind of developed a fan base in New Bedford, Fall River area and the surroundings, but I really want to try to like really now like make a name on the internet.
Yeah.
Because like that's how you get noticed by the big leagues, TNA and Ring of Honor and ultimately WWE. So I'm thinking like if I go here and he's, training Claudio Castagnoli, who's a huge name, and he's obviously doing really well. And Quackenbush had a very, very respectable traits with EOS. Like they went down there and they told us all the stories, and they showed us things that we had learned. So I really wanted to branch out, and I just thought to myself recently, well, if I did that just to train, why can't I do that to wrestle?
Right.
Granted, it's a little further a drive.
A couple
but,
more
like,
hours.
Professional wrestlers, they travel 308 days a year.
Right.
And they go all over the world. What am I bitching about a 16-hour drive to Elyria, Ohio, when if I want this to be legitimately my career, I should
You'd
be doing
that
this
all the time.
anyway.
Right.
So ultimately, I was like, man, this makes so much sense to not like do it. But obviously, a lot of nerves were involved.
Right,
Like
yeah.
it's out of my comfort zone. I've been in New England for a little while,
Yeah.
and I have a little name. I use the term loosely because
Yeah.
what's like you know what I mean. So
Speaking of that, Highwind wasn't known for his promos, but what'd he say all the time?
Ohio,
the
Japanese word for hello,
Ohio.
Ohio. So yeah, that is
A little throwback.
that is
to the
pretty
old, yeah.
coincidental. Yeah, it's a little yeah.
I was gonna say, I mean, the Beyond thing. You were wrestling that Beyond Wrestling style forever since I've known you. That
Right.
like high energy, like very like I don't want to say flippy dudes, but you know what I mean. It's like that. I can't think of the word. I'm trying to think of. Very visual, you know what I mean.
Right.
A lot of what you're doing.
I always referred to it as a hybrid style of wrestling.
Right.
Because it was a little bit of different styles, just like melded together. And another thing that really kept me intrigued about Beyond was the fact that it was the closest product that I've seen that was related to RDW.
I'm sure you got a lot of old RDW flashbacks. So like while you're
Oh my god, absolutely! Like here I am watching these guys doing these insane bumps just to get a reaction. I'm like, that's exactly what we did.
out of the boy, yeah,
That's
yeah.
exactly what we did. We worked for the boys. Like, yeah, we had like a small crowd in the footage we're watching in the background, but like, it wasn't anything like what they had. It was just
Right, yeah.
no audience at all, just the boys. And
Just-
like,
Oh,
I was
right
like,
there,
man,
yeah.
like if I'm gonna push myself, this is gonna be it. And
I gotta give you props on that because I was actually doing some research on Beyond Wrestling, and I seen you do a walk over 3 people's back from the top rope and then hook into a tornado DDT, and I was very impressed by that.
thank you.
You guys really have to push yourself, and you definitely accomplished that, and I look forward to more stuff seeing you in the ring and Beyond Wrestling.
Now, I was gonna, that first Beyond show that you went out to Ohio and all that stuff, that's what trickled now into you working for Beyond all the time?
Yeah, because basically it was considered like my little tryout weekend.
Yeah.
I stood there basically Friday, Saturday, Sunday, drove back Sunday, and came back to the real world on Monday morning at some point, whatever. But that was basically like kind of like my tryout weekend. It was their taping for Keep the Streak Alive.
Yep.
And it was a very, very, very intimidating atmosphere. Like my first time out there, because you have all these guys that you know for a fact they're gonna go balls out, and you know for a fact like there's gonna be something that you've never seen before.
Yeah, something's gonna blow your mind.
How the hell am I gonna stand out?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And my opponent that I had was an AIW standout, Arrow. He's like a big high-flying cruiserweight out in that area.
Okay.
So here I am working this guy who's like an established name in like absolute intense wrestling, which is probably, in my opinion,
one of the bigger promotions in that area.
One of the top 10 indies in the country. In my opinion, like AIW is a promotion that stands out as far as like the smart marks are concerned. Like they're the ones that people pay attention to. So here I am wrestling one of their like top cruiserweights. Like, oh shit, like here we go. Like step up or fucking get off the pot kind of thing. You know what I mean? And thankfully, I had a pretty decent match with him, and I really kind of like got like a connection with the guys, and they really appreciated what I did, and they really liked my look because I was starting to wear like the MMA like shorts.
This is after you got rid of the black and red with the red drip baggy pants, right?
Yep. I figured if I'm gonna go into this atmosphere, I want to look as professional as I possibly can, because if anything, if my wrestling doesn't like get over, at least I look like I'm making an effort. And I've always been like a clean cut guy, and I've always been in good shape, so that's always been an advantage for me. So I also use that, in doing like innovative spots like we talked about before. Yeah. But obviously working this kid that I know, okay, he kind of has like a good background of that too. So
he wants to tear it up. You want to tear it up.
Exactly. So it was a good mix of styles, and it worked out for us really well. And the other thing that helped probably with my mainstay is that I was putting in a quote signature 4-way match, because that's one of Beyond's like
big things.
Exactly. It's like the bread and butter of Beyond is like the 4-way matches are like absolutely
ridiculous,
nuts and just crazy and insane
spectacles.
Exactly. So I was putting one of those matches, and it was pretty short. It was about under 8 minutes, but in that 8 minutes, like everyone stood out in their own specific way. And I did a triple threat spot which got insanely over. Insanely over. And sometimes I still I picked my spots and points where I'll use it, but I took that spot and I still use it to this day because it got such a great reaction out of them.
Yeah.
That if I do this in front of a live crowd, they're gonna lose their tits.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so that weekend is probably what helped, keep me with Beyond Wrestling and, keep establishing that good connection with Drew.
Now, in this past year for Beyond, you've got to work with a lot of indie names. Can you name some people off for us?
I mean, obviously the top name that stands out would be AR Fox.
AR Fox, yeah.
I mean, that guy is a international.
We're
not even talking about independent. He's an international star. Like, working the legitimate Dragon Gate promotions in Japan, and he goes over Europe, and he's like a champion of Chile, and he's an opponent that when I was paired off for their big event that happened very recently, American Rana, like I knew like, all right, like here we go.
Yeah.
Like obviously the show was being pushed as like the biggest show of the summer as far as independent wrestling goes, and I firmly believe that
it certainly was one of the top few, if not.
Yeah, if not the top,
right.
At least in my opinion, Obviously, the PWG All-Star Weekend is like a very close comparison. As
the
far
Bola
as,
to the Battle of Los Angeles.
Exactly. But AR Fox was the individual that I thought like, all right, like everything that I've done prior to this, like not necessarily doesn't mean anything, but this is like the milestone
This could be
moment.
your standout
Before that
situation.
I had taken place in the Chikara Young Lions Cup.
Okay, yep.
And
That was you and the guy from Maine, Eric Atlas, right? Was he in that?
yeah,
Jimmy Jivy Capone, that's his name.
yes, that's his name.
Him. Who else was in that match?
Kobold was in it.
Cobalt and is that it? Just three-way?
Matthews was in it
Okay.
from Maine.
Cameron Matthews.
Cameron
yep.
Matthews was in it. And myself.
And
So
you,
it was-
okay,
and,
yeah,
it was a four-way. And I was fortunate enough to go over in that matchup.
Yep.
Which was awesome because then I already had like a relationship with like Matt Quackenbush because like I mentioned previously, I went down there and trained with him.
Yeah.
And then I had like a few training seminars with him. But besides that, when I started working Beyond, he kind of noticed like the potential in me, and he invited me to do the Young Lions Cup, which is a huge honor, an incredible honor to work that, because many guys, Tim Dunce, and I can go on forever as far as guys that have, I made a name out of that tournament alone.
Lions Cup, yeah.
You know what I mean? And I went to the second round, faced the the eventual winner, Mr. Touchdown, and that match was probably like, as far as like a career standpoint goes, like the highest peak that I've reached.
Right.
Because it was on the biggest scale that I've been on Chikara.
Up to that point.
Up to that point. Beyond Wrestling was like, kind of like put the spotlight on me, but then Chikara like took that spotlight and was like, put me on the show there, and it was like, damn, like there comes a moment, and that was one of those moments where it became so surreal. Like, this is like legitimately happening now. I'm working these prominent, independent shows where a lot of people pay attention to, and
especially online,
especially on the internet, and it was all thanks to Beyond Wrestling.
Yeah,
me driving down and making that crazy trip to
Ohio,
Larry, Ohio. Like I pretty much lost the job that I had at that time to make that weekend trip, and obviously, as far as like at home, issues went, that was kind of like
a problem,
a little bit of a problem. Like, here I am with 2 kids, and I'm losing my job to wrestle. Like, what kind of idiot am I? And I'm thinking to myself, well, if I lose my job, I can collect. I can be a bum for a little while, but at least I can wrestle. Obviously, things worked out in the long run, but sometimes like with wrestling, you have to take leaps and bounds, even though you don't know what the outcome is, because if you don't take that chance, the one thing that I've always said with young talent and guys that ask me my opinion as far as like, quote, how did I break out? And in my opinion, I don't think I've truly broken out yet. I still think like there's barriers that I can leap over. Like, I still think there's plenty of things that I need to do in order to be completely satisfied. Not that I'm not grateful for what I've done so far, but I always tell guys, as far as like, what do you need to do as far as like getting over and getting attention put on you and that whole spiel. I said, well, the number one thing about independent wrestling is the more time you put into it, the more you're going to get back.
Yeah.
If you're just going to be that weekend warrior and just, wrestle your, 2 shows a month in the same places over and over again, then, you'll get recognized with that crowd and you'll be over with that crowd. But as far as like
everywhere,
a national audience goes, and not to say independent wrestling is like a huge cup of tea by any means, because realistically speaking, there's probably only 10,000 realistic independent wrestling fans compared to what we see on the WWE with the millions.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You're saying die-hard
wrestling fans are the only people who really recognize what we do as far as independent goes.
Right.
Even though, we're the lifeblood of professional wrestling, it's those fans that know, like, where we came from and what we do and, the sacrifices that we put into it. I'm just rambling on now.
No, dude.
So.
No. Beyond Wrestling, your current home, I'd say, right? It's
absolutely. That is Beyond Wrestling is the top priority as far as any booking goes.
Do they have a show coming up? Do you want to plug?
Oh my God, absolutely, and it's a huge show. As a matter of fact, they're doing Well, it's a whole weekend that's happening, but the live show is going to be the finals for the Tournament for Tomorrow 2 tournament.
Right.
Now, the original tournament for tomorrow is when Beyond Wrestling really first saw A.R. Fox.
Okay.
Really first saw guys like ACH, who's like a mainstay right now in Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
And guys like Aaron Epic, who really, really, really broke out as far as independent wrestling goes, even though he's been wrestling for
Forever
and a day down in Florida where he's based off of. You know, that tournament really helped put him like on the spotlight. But hey, this guy can go.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So for me to have my name put on the ballot, that's like pretty much as high as me going on the Young Lions Cup.
Yeah.
Because you go on the Young Lions Cup, your name gets recognized. You
Yeah.
go on the tournament for tomorrow, your name gets recognized. And the other thing that's very unique about this tournament that was I'm not sure if it's never been done. I'm not going to quote anything because I'm pretty sure like something similar has happened. But there's also women involved.
Okay.
There's 8 guys and there's 8 women. So the first round matchups, who knows what's going to happen?
Right.
You can have a guy versus girl. Girl versus girl, guy versus guy, obviously. But it's like it adds to that like element of surprise where, damn, like all right,
shit can get crazy. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's one thing that I love about Beyond is that they take things that's not exactly traditional and they experiment with it. They see
Right.
what kind of reaction. I mean, they ran a complete Name Your Own Price show in Bridgewater, Massachusetts.
I know. I don't think I went to that show. I think I went to the Bridgewater one after that when they brought in the Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
But I heard about that one where it was just like, that's so crazy. Like,
A fan appreciation show, like, hey, name your own price, and that's your admission fee.
yeah.
You want to pay $1, you get in for $1. You want to pay $5, you pay $5. You want to pay $20, you pay $20. And I'm pretty sure like no other wrestling company.
Yeah, I don't think
that
anybody's
before.
ever done it specifically like that, man. That's crazy.
Right.
But that's going to be at the Fett Music Hall in Providence, Rhode Island, right? The show. I don't
Yes.
know the date.
November 17th.
November 17th.
The whole tournament is taking place. They're having 2 secret shows, which I'm sworn by secrecy not to
talk about.
announce.
Yeah.
All I can say simply is you have to, email the man himself, beyondwrestling
Figure
at
out where it's gonna
gmail.com, as far as like purchasing your tickets and getting it where
to
it
the secret
goes.
shows.
But yeah, like
Now-
the secret shows are going to be essentially the first round and semi-round.
Are the secret shows going to be held in a building that's right near where the place is?
I can answer that, and the answer to that's no.
No, okay. I was thinking this.
It's not even going to be in the same state. I'll put it.
Okay,
that way.
okay. I was just thinking the secret shows are probably going to be held at the Chop Shop right down the street.
No. It's not going to be held there. It's going to be held in somewhere else.
Yeah. So check it out, lookmonofans.com.
LookMonoFans.com. They're obviously on Facebook and anything that's social media. You type in Beyond Wrestling.
So you'll find it, yeah. Now, what about you, Anthony Stone? You got a Twitter or anything like that you want to throw out there?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I actually recently, speaking of, the internet, I decided recently to build a personal webpage.
Okay.
Because, I thought, like, yeah, social media is great. We have Facebook and we have Twitter, but, like, when you look at the internet, like, there's always Google.
Right,
And
yeah.
what happens, you type in, Google, you want to search something, it's going to bring you to the website. It's not necessarily going to bring you to the Facebook.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if you go on YouTube and you type in Anthony Stone, you'll find some matches of mine.
Right.
But you won't necessarily find my Facebook.
Right. Okay.
Unless you specifically find me, which is the reason why I decided, I was like, you know what, man? And this is only like a month-old project that I decided.
Something
all right,
you've been working on for a little bit.
I'm going to have my own personal webpage. I'm currently working on getting the domain finalized, which
Right.
is going to be theanthonystone.com.
Okay.
So that's going to be probably at the end of the weekend. That's going to be like a legitimate thing. The website itself is theanthonystone.wix.com.
Okay.
So if you feel like typing that whole nonsense out, like, but yeah, as far as like social media goes, like at Facebook, it's The Anthony Stone.
So,
Facebook
yeah.
/ The Anthony Stone. On Twitter, my tag is @Stoneman26.
Okay. Stoneman26.
Yep. Well, there's an underscore between Stoneman and @Stoneman _ 26. And then, like I said, on YouTube, my specific channel goes back because I kept the name Bloodstone true. I went youtube.com / Bloodstone48.
Bloodstone48. So youtube.com /Bloodstone48.
Yep.
And you got a question there, Mac? I know there's usually your what do you advice you want to give to the guys?
That's exactly where I'm going. We're about to wrap up here. Much appreciation of coming down, having a good time, telling some old stories. If you you wrestling fans didn't know about Anthony Stone, now you know. Final question. What kind of...
Final question.
Oh,
Right.
final question from...
Nope. Fuck it. Final question.
Final question from myself, Monster Mac.
All right.
What kind of advice do you have for newcomers looking to get into business? Do you have any words of advice? What you think they should be and shouldn't be doing?
Any schools you suggest in the area? Or
Well, I mean, I can only speak for the area that I live in. If you're going to choose any wrestling school, I mean, anywhere, I would highly recommend the Wrestle Factory.
Okay.
Based out in Huntington, Pennsylvania. WrestleFactory.com. You can get information based off of that. As far as the New England area goes, obviously where we're all from, the top 3 schools that I would recommend, 3 schools, the New England Pro Wrestling Academy.
Right, that seems to be like one of the big ones now.
It's the former Killer Kowalski school,
yeah.
Okay, which obviously has its own reputation. I mean, Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Enough said.
Sergeant Muldoon.
Yeah.
That's the 2 people I go to.
Right.
Triple H and Muldoon. Let's continue.
All right. And they're based in North Andover, Mass.
Yep.
So that's like the first school that I would say, hey, you want to learn your craft, you go there. Secondly, I would without a doubt recommend the Top Rope School, the Lockup, because they have a phenomenal trainer there right now that's kind of running the thing. One of Beyond Wrestling's own.
Talking about Biff.
Biff Busick.
Yeah.
His education, where he legitimately trained with Lance Storm,
yeah, man,
is and Funaki. I mean, you want to talk about traveling to learn? You talking? This guy went all the way up north to Canada. They went all the way down south to Texas, just to learn the complete ends around about wrestling. And now you look at him and
Biff's another guy that we want to try to get.
Oh
one
my
on
god!
here with.
I hope
that'd
you
be a
guys
really good
do
one,
because that guy. I've had some amazing matches with him, with some of the Wrestling Is promotions, and even a Beyond Wrestling. Biff's a phenomenal talent, and he's actually featured in the main event of the
tournament for tomorrow.
Of the tournament for tomorrow too, because he's going to be having in 60-minute Iron Man match with
Eddie Edwards. That's going to be insane.
Probably is going to be one of his last dates before he goes to the WWE, honestly, because that's a big spectacle if he's actually going there, him and Davey Richards or not. But,
yeah,
I mean, if that's not a crazy send-off, I don't know what is.
Right. And that's the 3rd school.
The 3rd school would be, honestly, in Providence, Rhode Island, the Chop Shop. I go there basically every Wednesdays, and I help JT Dunn.
Yep.
Who kind of runs the show there, and he's got a lot of young kids that go there, and the atmosphere that he provides to these kids it's very educational,
and it's back to that whole young and hungry thing.
Exactly. And you're looking at another guy like JT Dunn who's really blowing up on indies right now, and he's a guy who's currently involved in it. So as if you're looking at from an outside perspective and say all right, who am I going to learn from? I always wanted to learn from the guys that are big now,
right? Because
they're the ones that's doing it
now.
And JT and Biff, 2 guys that are running that school, they're on separate classes. Excuse me. They're prime examples. And they're big mainstays right now in independent wrestling, and obviously Beyond Wrestling as well.
Yeah,
just in general.
And I'm gonna drop a little bit of information right now that nobody knows yet, but. Next week we're doing the JT Dunn one next Wednesday.
Wow, that's
awesome.
Chop
Shop, so we'll probably see
look
you
at that.
there.
See, without even me knowing, you got the plug, brother.
Yeah. So we're gonna be doing his podcast pre-class on Wednesday.
Nice.
So we'll probably see you next
You'll
Wednesday.
see me then.
Wednesday when you show
that is
up.
awesome.
But is there anything else? Anything you want to throw out there? Any stories you want to tell? Anything you think you missed? RDW. What was that? RDW reunion.
I'm sure there'll be.
What about you, Levesque? Anything that you want to ask him? No, Levesque shakes his head.
I'm sure there'll be another one in the books. Obviously, we had a very recent RDW reunion show.
Yeah, Scott Levesque missed it, right? He had work.
Unfortunately, he missed it. The first one that he's missed. The turnout did not turn out as great as the previous shows did. A lot of conflict interest that happened, and I mean. We're talking years and years and years past where all these guys that, they have their families and they have their personal lives and they're not involved with professional wrestling anymore, and it's still an interest. They'll still watch Raw, but that's pretty much the
where
extent
the interest
of it,
ends.
where it goes. Death did get double booked.
Yeah.
And he was unfortunately not able to make
it out.
Make it
because
out. So
he was booked, according to Scott Levesque, for another backyard wrestling
I
promotion.
don't know for
I don't
sure
know if
what
that's
happened.
accurate, but
He
Scott
just-
Levesque, that's
he just couldn't make it.
word around the
But
log cabin.
He had band practice, is what I heard on the internet.
That's what I'm gonna go with. But as far as another RDW reunion show, maybe once a year we'll test it out and see how that goes and give everyone enough time and preparation to, because there were some guys again from out of town, Bobby Biggins, who really wanted to participate in it and he couldn't. And
Well, if you do ever have another RDW reunion show, please let me and Trinity number one know, so that way we can show up during the main event and cut our own promo and
Yes.
ruin the whole thing.
you know
for
what?
You guys.
I think after all these years, I would give you that much at least.
I appreciate that.
All right,
so,
all right.
So keep me in mind.
And I'm sure it'll be very entertaining,
Right, yeah,
needless to
just
say.
randomly,
So,
you know.
like, all right, you know what? Here we go.
Dude, I want to thank you for coming down, man. This has been a few months in the making, and I really enjoyed the time coming down and reminiscing about the old times. Scott Levesque yelling about RDW in the background, all these things, man. Thank you for coming out, man.
And guys, thank you for having me. Like even before you guys came, I went on Twitter immediately and plugged you guys, saying I'm about to have this podcast. Stay tuned, because you guys always, try to help out each other and giving guys like me the time of day just to kind of like tell my side of the story and just, shoot the shit with you guys and have a good time. And it's moments like this that really make me, appreciate like the friendship that we've developed and kept and maintained throughout the years, because it's without a doubt, like I know it took forever and a day for us to get here, but I'm glad it finally happened.
And if there's any promoters that you're currently working for that's looking for an awesome tag team, Mack Attack, you keep that team in mind, all right?
Absolutely.
All right, trying to get
Beyond
that
Wrestling,
book.
as a matter of fact, at the tournament for tomorrow is having a tag team gauntlet.
A gauntlet,
So,
you say.
Possibly, maybe keep your toes, crossed, because after tonight, I might mention your names.
I appreciate
might
it.
mention your names, guys.
So thank you, everybody, for listening. You can check this out. It's going to be on iTunes, Stitcher, themaccast.com, where it always is.
MonsterMac.net, of course.
Yeah, which I'm not sure if is actually working or not right now.
It's still up. I went there today.
We have no sponsors, so I'm going to say, everybody have a good night.
Have a good night, everyone, and thank you for listening.